The most anticipated World Championship match in years, featuring the two top players on the planet, has been building in tension game after game. World champion Magnus Carlsen played brilliantly in Game 1 against challenger Fabiano Caruana, but when the champ missed a couple of winning lines, he saw his advantage slowly drift away and had to settle for a hard-fought but frustrating draw. With the match still tied after games 2 and 3, the players are back to battle for that first taste of victory. Exciting Game 4 action from London coming up next.
Hello and welcome to our World Championship coverage of this wildly anticipated match between American challenger Fabiano Caruana and the Rady King, Magnus Carlsen. We are in round 4 of a potential 12 rounds plus playoffs, and so far the tension is simply mounting as we've had 3 draws with some twists and turns, but so far both players playing like they're the 2 best players in the world, as they are. And we see Magnus Carlsen 1.5 points, Fabiano Caruana waving that American flag also at 1.5 points. I'm Jennifer Shahade, and we are in studio here in St. Louis. I'm with Grandmaster Yasser Seirawan. What do you think, is today the day?
I don't know. It's deadlocked, of course, and the players have been playing really good chess. And like you said at the top of the show, it's like number 1 and number 2. And so far, neither player has been able to get the measure of the other. Today, Magnus will be white. It's his second opportunity. He didn't show anything the first time around in Game 2. Is today the day? Well, let's find out.
Well, you know, white hasn't been much so far yet.
Nothing. No, white hasn't done anything in this match. Right, so let's take a look at the format, though.
Yes, for those of you who are just joining us, this World Championship match is best of 12 games. That means the first player to get to 6.5 points will win the match. Luxurious time control, 3 parts, 30-second increment for the beginning of the game, and a prize fund of over $1 million. €1 million, sorry.
€1 million, indeed. About 1.13 million US. And the schedule, Jen?
Well, the schedule is very luxurious as well. You have 2 games followed by a rest day, and that's to give the players plenty of time to prepare and do postmortems of previous games. Right now, we're in Game 4. Tomorrow is a rest day, and we come back on November 15th for Game 5.
And 6. Then, in case of a 6-6 draw or tie, the tie breaks will be played on November 27th and 28th.
And we have Grandmaster Maurice Ashley to get us hyped for Game 4 and to also talk a little bit about what else is going on in the world of chess.
Well, 4 is the magic number today, and of course these players know how critical it is to look to take a lead now. The match is definitely counting down, and it's a short match, but even in the history of Game 4s, it's been quite critical that you take a lead early, because people who take a lead early generally go on to win the match. But first of all, let's talk about the ladies who are looking to become part of the Final 4. We have the Elite 8, but things have been decided, at least in a couple of these matches. Finally going down, our young favorite, Gully Girl, we call her. She has lost to Ju In-jun, and she gave a very valiant battle, but Ju In-jun, the women's world champion, was able to indeed send the youngster from Uzbekistan home with a win. Ju In-jun, the only player in the competition who has only required 2 games to win all her matches so far. Simply dominant in her performance, trying to show that she's indeed the best on the planet, at least the women's world champion. Can she keep her title? Also, Katerina Lagno, who had that epic 9-game battle in the last round, decisive this time, 2-0. That's it, shutting the door. She's in the finals as well. And we are family, and I got my sister with me. The Muzichuks are now battling it out as Anna Muzichuk, she was able to draw both her games against Kisenyuk, so they're going to a playoff. And Maria Muzichuk needing to defeat the youngest player in the competition, Jansaya Abdumalik. She did win today, and she's also going to a playoff. So the two sisters will be playing side by side tomorrow, the two Ukrainian sisters, as a matter of fact. So that's going to be very exciting to see. Well, a little bit of Game 4 trivia we should point out. There have been 7, count them, 7 12-game World Championship matches. Only one has resulted in a decisive Game 4, and that was back in 2010 as Anand defeated Topalov in Sofia, Bulgaria to take the lead in that match and eventually win it. He, by the way, had the white pieces. Does that bode well for Magnus Carlsen today, or will Fabiano Caruana be able to block him and continue this drawing streak? We will see as the game is set to begin.
Wow, thank you, Maurice. That Game 4, how pivotal it is indeed to these short 12-game World Championship matches. What's your take? Just overall, how do you just feel about the match so far, Jen? You're satisfied with Fabi? How he's played?
I feel like I kind of agree with Vladimir Kramnik. Like, I'm not horrified, but I'm kind of, I want him to get more with white.
Exactly.
And I love what Kramnik said. I'm sure word trickled down to Fabi and his team, but I love what he said about how he doesn't like Fabi's white handling with the Ras and Limo, not only because he's not getting amazing advantages, but also because it doesn't really fit his style in a way. I believe he said something like that.
Right.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact words.
Well,
so
he's just a wonderful
he'll...
interview. He came on and
Yes.
spoke with us for almost an hour, giving his insights, and as such a great world champion that he was, it was just marvelous listening to his take on the match.
So, I mean, I'm a huge Fabi fan, of course. I want him to win. And I thought that it was close to 50-50 before the match began. And I still think that, but I haven't gotten even more confident in Fabiano since it started.
Right.
So I'm waiting for that, like...
moment to happen. One thing
Yes.
for myself, I do feel that Magnus has, at times, outplayed Fabi pretty convincingly. Like, for example, yesterday's game, I really felt that Fabi was about to get something. He blundered with Bishop D2, and then he was slightly worse. So he has been getting outplayed. Game 1 especially.
Well, but Game 1, though, like kind of like
Right.
what Kramnik said, really genius play for Magnus.
Absolutely.
Just absolutely genius.
Yeah.
So if Magnus plays like that all match,
it's over.
We're in
Thank
trouble.
you for coming. But the point is we're deadlocked. We're one and a half, 1.5.
And he didn't play like that all match. He didn't even play like that all game.
Correct.
So
he did miss his chances. So overall, I still feel that it's a pick-em match.
You do, yes.
I do.
Yeah, and we're still waiting for that tension to break and give us a sense, this is all Fabi or this is all Magnus.
Exactly.
And it's thrilling to see, and it looks like we're starting to get moves, yes.
All right, well, let's
we had a big question yesterday, would there be an E4, would there be a D4? And I think I was the one who said none of the above. I win. What do I win?
Again. I don't know, but it's
I win the center.
You win the center. It's in English.
Because I get to play E5.
Yeah,
right?
The point there is Fabiano in his 2 games with white has played 1 E4. First game, Magnus, when he was white, went D4. Now he's going C4. Maybe sidestepping the Queen's Gambit, declined.
Which he got less than 0 from in Game 1, in Game 2.
And they went for a very straightforward English, 4 knights with G3. No beating around the bush, G3 on move 2 or things like that. Just right down the main line. And we have a reverse Sicilian on the board. And Bishop C5. Okay, this is a move that has become popular of late. When I had these positions as white, and I had them numerous times, I mean, it's just a simple automatic that everybody played knight B6 to get out of the ambush that this bishop on G2 is looking at. And there was always these threats of knight takes E5. So everybody and his brother played knight B6. But very, very recently, Bishop C5 has become the go-to move, and we've seen a lot of elite players, including Sasha Grishuk from Russia. And now, today, in the World Championship, Fabiano
But
playing Bishop
Yasser,
C5.
you're saying that, but I'm looking in the database. I don't know, you're a specialist in this variation, but I don't see Bishop C5 anywhere in the database. I see 3 games. Bishop C5 from this position, unless I have the wrong position. This is the position, right?
Yeah.
Bishop C5 has only been played 3 times in this position. Knight B6, 1,900 times. Bishop E6 first. Maybe you mean it after Bishop E6. But Bishop C5 at this moment has only been played 3 times in the database.
We're going to have to update your database.
We're going to have to update something. I mean,
that's what I'm thinking.
What's going on? Something's wrong.
Something's wrong with the database there.
All right, I'll keep researching because
Grand Chess Tour, you could see a couple of days with Bishop C5 for sure. Then came castles, and castles, D2, D3, Rook E8. And I believe we're up to date with the play after Rook E8, the last move. So indeed, it looks like a Sicilian dragon in reverse. White has the extra move in hand. And this move, Rook E8, okay, oftentimes the bishop does voluntarily drop back to B6, but the move Rook E8 at least intimates or suggests that Fabi may be leaning towards bringing his bishop back to F8.
Right, because you see that sometimes in the reverse dragon.
Absolutely.
Normally with Bishop E2,
right,
which would be Bishop E7, that you play Rook play Rook E1 to play Bishop F1. And,
right.
And in this case, it's like, it's kind of confusing because I'm used to looking at this from the black side.
Me too.
But
I'm used to looking at it from the white side because I'm an English player.
But I like the dragon for black, so of course I don't hate this choice at all for Magnus Carlsen. I have to say, obviously I'm on Team Fabi, but when you look at what he got with white in game 2, I think this is a wise choice.
Oh yeah, well by comparison, no question about that, especially since he actually started having to grovel for a draw almost directly out of the opening. Okay, so now the question is, what should white do? How to...
Well, in the
dragon, I don't know if increase your advantage is the right term, but how to proceed?
Well, in the dragon, normally we have a couple different possibilities. Just playing the simple chess moves, Bishop D2, Rook C1.
Bishop
and
D2.
And then sometimes we're trying to get our knight to the C5 square.
Rook C1 with the idea of either going through E4 or A4 and then to go to C5. And again, put pressure with the knight on C5. If this knight magically transfers to C5, we'll be attacking B7. So Bishop D2. Yeah.
There's also an idea that I feel like you relate to with playing like A3 and B4.
A3 and B4. A3 with the idea that let's make a move for black for just argument's sake. We'll just drop back and we try to do things of this nature with white.
That my dad, who's a FIDE master, always used to joke because he was a good friend of yours.
Absolutely.
And obviously a huge fan of your chess. He used to joke that you would play B4, Rook B1 every game.
And call him genius.
Exactly. That's how you became one of the top 10 players in the world.
Exactly.
Which was minority attacks.
Well, a lot of Sicilian players love to play A6 and B5 and B4 to try to win this pawn. So you've got 2 very good suggestions for white, how he might continue. Bishop D2, Rook C1, A2, A3 ideas, potentially even Knight E4 directly.
It looks like we got something else on the board, yes.
What do we have?
Let's update the board.
Okay.
Because, yeah, some moves that...
Oh my, so it looks like we do have Bishop D2.
And then after Bishop D2, Knight takes C3. You know, I'm not used to seeing this.
Not at all.
Because I think normally the common wisdom is if I get to play B takes C3, I'm super happy because I've got, pawn takes.
Yes,
In the dragon, B takes C6, I'm usually really happy because the B file is what's better than the C file? The B file.
Open B file, right.
But here, I guess the problem is there an immediate... why is this not a good way for white to play?
Well, first of all, absolutely. The move knight takes C3 in the classical has always been frowned upon. Don't do that. You're helping your opponent capture towards the center. Now this B pawn plays a nice role in terms of attacking more squares. And as you say, your rook comes onto the b file, you get some very nice play, and that's usually not offset by whatever black is trying to achieve on the king side. So conventional wisdom is knight takes c3 is good for white. Now,
oh yeah, or I mean, on the contrast, it would be usually knight takes c6 is frowned upon for white.
Because of b takes c6, and black has a bigger center, and so on.
And one strategic reason for that, besides all the things you were saying, is that honestly, black's play in this position is a lot of times to play on the d4 square, to stick a bishop on g4 and play knight d4. Look at how that rook on e8 is looking at the pawn on e2 as well. So that's a lot of black's counterplay. When we get to play pawn takes c3, then goodbye counterplay. But there must be something very concrete there that induced Magnus to take with the bishop, because strategy-wise, we take with the pawn all day.
Exactly.
And I'm assuming it has to do with the move e4 for black.
That's what I'm thinking as well, is that bishop takes b takes c3. The immediate e4, I'm not a big fan of this, because there is, again, this bishop on g2 constantly in ambush on the long diagonal. Here the bishop on g2 will hit the rook, and this knight is going to attack this knight on c6. But maybe it's something based on f7, f5. This is very hard for me to understand, because, again, the classics say don't take on c3. Maurice, are we in familiar opening territory? Is this all theory? Because we are a little bit confused.
Well, we did update the database, Yaz, and you are correct. Bishop c5 is a move. More kudos to you as an English specialist here in this position. Bishop c5. However, this line, as you mentioned, has been played before, and actually by Caruana himself all the way to the current position. And this is a game we did not feature very highly, but we actually saw this exact position before happen on the Grand Chess Tour. That is, this position with Caruana and Wesley So, all these moves, rook e8 was played, bishop d2, knight c3, bishop c3, and knight takes d4. Fabiano Caruana, Wesley So, Paris Blitz. This year. This year. And Fabiano has repeated the line. The game went 67 moves and ended in a draw. So this is a position from their game, and Fabi has decided that he, in fact, did like his position, and he has repeated the exact same moves. Knight c3, bishop c3 was played in that game as well. So we have a position that Fabiano is familiar with, or at least in a blitz game, he must have looked at the game and decided that that position was fine for me, and Magnus now seeing it himself in practice for the first time.
And if you would continue, how did the blitz game for the next 5 moves, let's say?
Rook c1 was played.
Rook c1.
Bishop b6, rook e1, bishop g4, takes, ed4, a3, c6.
Looks like a very common position from this particular opening, and black satisfied.
Looks that way.
All right. So,
but that still didn't answer our question about b takes c3.
And now, if you would be so kind as to answer our question about b2 takes c3, because bishop takes c3, those elite grandmasters all recapturing on c3 with the bishop, and we're looking at each other and saying, hey, when I learned chess, I was supposed to capture towards the center.
This position has only been seen 3 times
in
history, and in this position, both times, 2 times, bishop takes on c3 was played.
Okay.
And by the way, the other 2 games, we have one game from 2 players who are decent players, 2174 and 2382.
But amateurs nonetheless. Yeah.
And the other game was a 2125 against a 1630.
Ooh.
So, with not exactly top player.
Right.
This game was the 2174 with white against a 2382. He did play b takes c3. The only example in the database from this position. The game went on to be a victory for black from this position. So really,
and what was
very small sample size as far as the opening is concerned.
Clearly, too small a sample size. But after bc3, what was black's choice? He didn't play e4.
He played bishop g4.
In both cases, bishop g4?
It's only one game.
Oh, sorry.
And only one game, and he played bishop to g4.
And the chess engine itself. Does the chess engine prefer B2 takes C3 or
engine,
bishop takes
let
C3
me
as
get the-
played by the world champion?
Let me get the engine up in a second. I got to find where my engine is hiding.
Okay.
Hide and
I'll
seek.
come to you guys in a second. when I come
Okay,
up with the
make it a good one. Make it a good one. A good engine, that is. Bishop takes C3 was Magnus's choice. Knight D4. And I agree with you, Jen. If I had white, I would have probably recaptured with the pawn. And by failing to recapture with the pawn, this move knight d4 makes perfect sense.
Right.
Because what black's problem is this long diagonal. Specifically, this bishop on g2 is really kind of, it's obnoxious pressure, we might say.
Obnoxious pressure?
Obnoxious.
I
It's
like
just-
that. I haven't
yeah.
heard that in reference to chess before.
Yeah, it's just a little bit obnoxious. So from black's point of view, he wants to clear the diagonal and establish a pawn wedge on b7 and c6. He wants to play c7, c6, completely shutting down that bishop. And if black is allowed to achieve all of those things that I've just described, it's quite possible he'll simply become better. Not, you know, like he'll jump past equality and he'll simply have a better position. So white has to do something very concrete.
It looks like we have a few more moves, by the way.
Okay.
B4, bishop d6, and I think rook b1.
Knight takes c3, bishop takes c3, knight d4 on board, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And then b2, b4.
b4.
I like that. That's a game. I mean, rook
You
b1,
like that.
b4.
Exactly.
Okay. b4, bishop b6.
Bishop d.
Bishop David 6.
What?
What? Serious? What? No. Bishop.
Oh, I guess it makes sense. Knight takes d4, pawn takes d4, bishop takes d4 would be bishop takes b4, right?
Well, you can win your pawn back, but are you sure he went bishop d6?
That is correct. That is
Yep.
the game move.
Okay, now this is getting weirder and weirder to me, because I was always taught that I will happily trade my b2 pawn for your e5 pawn in such positions. So in other words, I agree the material's equal, but that b2, there should be a white pawn on b2, and there should be a black pawn on e5. And if I was taught that if I, as white, could trade those two guys off the board,
Maybe
I'm
take
really
on
happy.
Why couldn't you
maybe
take on G3 though? That's what I
G3 instead
was
of
about to ask.
B4, is that better?
Oh, sure, that's a totally legal move.
Yeah, because bishop G7 is an H2 check.
So how does this change things? You still have the center,
No, this is.
but now I'm going to get that beautiful queen outpost. I think that's nice.
On d4.
Yeah, better than
I guess you'd have to just, you have to look at, you know, very, very specific ideas, right? I mean, I appreciate what you're saying there, Jen, that the queen on d4 is so good. I would, if you step back to defend the pawn on c7, or if you play a move like
c6, you have rook
c6,
c4, huh?
I'd want to boot the queen out from this nice outpost.
Queen B2? Hold on.
Yeah, well, okay, sorry, Maurice. Queen b2.
Yeah, that hits e2 too. That's a problem.
Oh, queen c2, rook
Yeah.
e2.
Yeah.
Oh, darn it. Queen
You
c2,
were
rook
about to
e2.
get your queen c2, queen c2, rook c2. You were about to get your.
a4, rook b1.
Yes.
Everything is so good. Oh.
You were so excited. I could see it.
So you, well, once again, bishop takes g3. Wow. Wow.
That looks
confused.
like a big improvement over bishop b4, though.
I think it's a
Yeah.
massive improvement over bishop b4. I still think that.
You still like white? So
I'm
You
an
like white
English
here?
player, yeah.
to continue along
Really?
the desperado, though, what happens after bishop takes g7? I guess bishop h2 is just too strong, huh?
It's
Let's take a
not
look.
100% clear. I think
Because
the problem
we're
is.
both messing up our each other's
Oh,
kings,
we're
right?
mauling one
Yeah.
another's
It's gotta be okay for
pawn
white.
shields. But the thing that I see is that as compensation for the pawn structure here a little bit is you're
G file.
really ready. You've got a rover on me.
I've been mauled worse. The white's been mauled worse than black here.
Yeah.
I mean,
Uh,
because I lost 2 of my king shields. You only lost 1, right?
right.
That's a problem.
Well, rook G8 is fast.
yeah, or your rook
well,
e6 idea.
I mean, I mean, it's everything is very, very a la tempo, right?
Right,
I mean,
because
it's
you're playing
very
rook c4
sharp.
now.
Right, rook g8. Rook g8 doesn't.
Rook g, bishop g4. I understand. Rook g8, really? That's slow, dude.
Maybe so.
Rook c4. Give me a tempo against the queen, thankfully.
And what are you gonna play? F3 next or F4? Or
Well, right now I don't see how
you
you really.
Queen g5, but I guess you have F4.
Queen g5, queen c1, perhaps.
All right, I can't get my king out of the way. But also, but how do I stop rook c4 in the fence? Let's go back.
Well, I can imagine bishop g4 as being
Rook c4?
Yeah, really kind of fast.
But rook c4, no? Bishop g4, rook c4 with the threat of f3.
Okay, so just a second, hold on. Maybe just step back and
No, f4. Or rook, f4 or rook c5 all look like challenges.
These are
E4
this is
there.
Weird. This
No,
is weird. Just a
this-
second. Just a second. We're back here, and we're looking at bishop g7, right? And this I don't trust. This looks good. Should be good for black after rook c1. This feels like white's king is a little bit too open.
Yeah.
I'm not happy about this.
So my bishop g7 wasn't a very good idea.
No, but
Well, you got to look at it.
oh, but you got to
Yeah.
look at it for sure. But in this position, I would probably be more intrigued by move like e3 with the idea of trying to bring out my pieces to the king side. Something like queen h5 and bishop e4 would be on my agenda.
Right, because I like that bishop on d4 is so beautiful, but the problem is you can play bishop b5 just trading it off.
Right, but
which
let's
is
go
kind of
back.
irritating.
Well, let's go back once more to our main line.
By the
we
way, before
started.
you leave, I just
Yeah,
checked
sorry.
our analysis with the engine.
Please.
And check out this line: bishop h2, bishop g7, bishop h2 check.
Okay, bishop g7, bishop h2 check, yeah.
King takes,
take.
queen h4 check. Back up, back up, back up. Queen h4 check, king g1. And as humans, we're quick to make the most natural move on the board.
Which is
the
a
engine
recapture.
plays bishop g4 instantly. Bishop h3, excuse me, instantly. With
Bishop
the
h3.
Oh,
that is
wow.
correct. With
Before
the threat,
taking.
With
Yeah.
the threat of queen g4 winning or queen g5 winning. And now this position changes dramatically
So
in
it takes on
assessment.
h3.
Take on h3, just queen takes on h3.
And now if we don't have a good way,
There's a lift coming.
The rover.
In two ways, by the way, because queen g4 check is a problem also, forcing you to the file if your bishop leaves.
Right.
If your bishop leaves and gives h6 squares an access, then queen g4 check with the rook lifting and suddenly big attack. But looks
time
like
to go.
money in the bank.
London calling.
Yep.
I like this. I like this variation.
Yeah,
I'm not
for
biased at
black,
all.
yeah.
I just love this.
So it's funny. Again, it's like, you know, as all of us we're decent players, but we play like humans. We capture back. We capture back and play
First
normally.
thing, yeah.
But sometimes you have to stop and look and say, do I have to? What else is possible here? And that bishop h3 line comes
I
as a
love it.
shocker and shows that black is indeed fine in that line.
Because
More
it
than
kind of
fine.
shows the two components of a great tactician. In my mind, there's the ability to calculate lines, and then there's also the creativity of a move like bishop h3. And clearly, bishop h3 to me comes more on the creativity side because the calculations aren't that difficult.
No.
They're not very long.
No.
Right? Once the bishop moves back, rook e6,
Right,
you're
right,
done.
right.
And or queen g4 and rook e6, and that's why we study both, you know, tactics that require us just to calculate, but also endgame studies that require us to look at, you know, beautiful ideas.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think is the bigger component of a great tactician? The ability to see candidate moves like bishop h3 that other people wouldn't see, or the ability to just brute force see more than the average guy?
I mean, for me, you know, like when I think of the great tacticians, and I think of Alekhine and Michael Tal, I think of their extraordinary creativity in the sense of, I mean, they'd make a move, And I'd be thinking to myself, what?
That is exactly, I agree with you 100%.
What?
Exactly. That to me is that kind of shocker. Just like this move Bishop H3 is, where you're going along logic, all you want, and patterns you know, and somebody plays a move that completely breaks a pattern, simply exceptional idea. Exceptional as in exception to the rule, exceptional idea. And you're just in awe. Like, what are you doing? What? And then you realize they found a wrinkle in the geometrics, the peculiar geometrics of that exact position.
That works specifically
that only works right now. It's not going to work anything else. Or if this thing, this was off, this pawn was pushed just one square, it'll all fall apart. But they find those kinds of things, and they're always, the brain's always looking for that twist as opposed to the standard, well, if I go here, you go here. Because, by the way, someone like Karpov is renowned as an incredible calculator.
Yes.
An incredible calculator. He could look and find and just calculate, but you would never call Karpov a great tactician.
Right.
Despite the fact that he's such a supreme calculator. And of course, he saw his share of tactics as well. But that was, what he did was not, it was more positional than tactical. He wasn't renowned as a tactician. But those guys like Tal, Bronstein, for example, same thing, would make a move. And, what? What is that? And then you look and you go, oh.
It works.
And you wake up. It works. It does.
Works.
It's quirky and it works.
Yeah, it's quirky and it works. So that original flair, Jennifer, that really stands out for me. By the way, just an announcement of our special guests on today's show.
We have a great roster of guests. First of all, we have the founder of the St. Louis Chess Club, Rex Sigfield, is coming on a little after 10 o'clock a.m. Here in St. Louis to follow up on his interview that he gave us in London. We also have Grandmaster Irina Krush, who is fresh from her bout at the Women's World Championship, where she got through her first round and lost to the reigning champ, Ju Wenjun.
Right.
And then we also have the author, Fred Whiteskin, who many of you know from Searching for Bobby Fischer, which later became a major movie. Also the author of Mortal Games about Garry Kasparov. He'll be on later today as well.
Wonderful.
By the way, I'm looking at this game position, and I'm feeling a little bit despondent about the position itself, because this looks like a draw. I mean, maybe Yasser, you can somehow enlighten me as to what you think about this position. But to me, when you see the knights leave the board in a straight-laced position like this one, where there are no real weaknesses for one side to milk and to really pressurize the person, then you just feel like, what could the guy do that's going to lose this game? Because it just looks very even. There are no weaknesses. I mean, Black's camp is absolutely perfect. The only problem he has is this pawn is under slight, and I do mean very slight pressure along this diagonal, something that can be resolved fairly directly with the move c6. And after that, how does White build this position and turn it into anything? I mean, this just looks so equal, just 0-0 everywhere you can look. Nothing at all in this position. Imbalance, yes, there is this imbalance of this pawn structure on this side versus this one on this side, but everything is so solid. The bishop is so, how can you, I mean, Magnus is going to have to come up with some kind of genius ideas in order to make anything of this position.
Wow, and yet I played for these positions as an English opening
with the bishop, without the knights?
I must say, I much prefer the position with a pair of knights. Like, for example, in the game position, what happened was after b4, bishop d6, I would have jumped on the opportunity to trade knights and take this pawn. By the way, we could go back.
And that would have been a severe imbalance. That's a completely different kind of imbalance appearing.
The other thing that you've seen, for example, is knight d2, and I refer you to a game where it was Magnus Carlsen versus Vladimir Kramnik from a London Classic, where they got a position where, for argument's sake, I know this isn't the exact position, but they got a position like this, where it wasn't just 4 bishops. Yes. There was a pair of knights, is what I'm saying. Now
that seems to make sense.
Right.
Keep knights on.
Keep a pair of knights on.
Or if you're going to exchange, like you mentioned, when knight takes d4, have more of a severe imbalance in the position than what
Right.
we have here.
Right.
The
Now,
imbalance is so.
now from a material point of view, obviously dead equality, nothing there to discuss. Without the knights, everything's lateral pieces, 4 bishops, rooks. It's going to be very hard and yet, for white to achieve something. But as a Sicilian players yourselves, you would be very happy whenever you can get this pawn to b5. So give me a suggestion for
Well, c6 looks like the first move that pops
c7,
in your head.
c6 is a
A6
excellent.
was played, by the way.
Okay, also an excellent suggestion. A6, A4. Okay. So imagine that I just get a lot of moves for free. So we're going to play very badly for black for a second. And I recall looking at a number of games of Bodvinik, I wanted to say. I remember Bruce Pandolfini on our show teaching Fabiano to fight like Bodvinik, right? Fight like Bodvinik. So this is the maximum that white is looking to achieve, okay? So first of all, he gets this pawn on b5, which neutralizes these 2 pawns. So in a sense, it's 2 versus 1 on the queen side, with white's 1 pawn holding back the 2 pawns, giving me this very nice majority of 4 versus 3 on the king side, and that's a genuine pawn. So for me, this is a very nice advantage for white. And I've done nothing for black. I've just let...
Yeah, I was about to say.
I was just saying.
Because,
okay, so what
despite all that, your
So-
advantage wasn't pronounced desperately crushing.
Right, no, not desperately crushing, but we have to understand what it is that white's playing for. So he's playing to neutralize the queenside majority by putting the pawn on b5, which every Sicilian player knows. You get that Sicilian endgame. Then you get to play d4, and then you get to have a nice kingside majority. And in the meantime, by the way, black's pieces, the rook on c8, the bishop on c8, the queen on d8, none of whom have moved. White's intentions are very clear, queen c2, rook d1, and d4. So we know what white's trying to do. Now the question is, does black have an active plan?
But what is the point of a6?
Oh,
What is the dual
well,
point of a6?
okay.
I mean, the point of it is a6 meant to induce the opening of the a file?
Correct. So Fabiano is for sure recognizing that white's about to put his pawn on b5. And he says, okay, I can imagine this pawn coming to b5. When it comes to b5, please do activate my rook for me. Let me play a6
So
takes
how's he going to
b5.
resolve? I get it. So how's he going to resolve his bishop on c8?
Maybe he'll let the bishop stand there. Just stay there.
Wow.
So let's say a6, a4.
And
Let's
has
just
been played. a4 is on the board.
Yeah, and let's just make let's make Luft, if we will, for Fabi for a moment. So then we'll go b5.
No. We'll wait. We'll wait because what are you going to do?
I do understand. And so from Fabi's point of view, he'll sit there and say, okay, my rook is developed. I'm going to leave my bishop on c8. I don't have to move my bishop. Let's say I'll go queen e7 as a for instance.
Okay,
Now,
queen c2?
yeah, exactly. So, okay, so hold on. So let's go back. I like white. I think I understand what white is trying to achieve. I'm saying what Fabi needs to do is develop a long-term plan. Does he want to play with c7, c6? It's a yes or no question. If the answer is no, great. Then how are you going to deal with your queen side? How are you going to develop your bishop? If you are going to play with c7, c6, great. Then what are you going to do with your light square bishop? Is it going to h3? Is it going to e6? Is it going to f5? So you've got to develop a long-term plan.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Yes, again,
Okay.
this is your kind of position. So
I love it.
This is what I'm challenged by.
Okay.
Could we just go back one move?
Sure.
Right. So here, the problem for black is this light square bishop. And also, secondarily, the problem you're talking about is what's black's plan?
Long term.
Long term, you talk about the bishop, where should it go? But isn't it more than that? It's not just where the bishop should go. It's after your bishop finds that square, what's the next move? And what's the next
Right.
move? Like, what's a plan? So the bishop
Right.
on f5, you might argue that e4 is is the plan you're aiming for somehow, which I think White actually wants to see happen.
Yeah.
Based on what you just said.
Right.
Looks like White wants to see that 4 against 3 happen.
Right.
So then what else? Should he be attacking on the king side? Should he be playing for f5 and e4, which looks super sharp and crazy, but looks like the only real break in the position? So if you're going to play with pawns, f5 has to be done if you're going to be black, if you're going to play with pawns. Because there's no, unless you're going to look for some h5, h4 thing. Like, what is black going to do without his bishop and long term as well? To me, it looks like you wanted to neutralize whatever White was doing. Play for c6, bring your bishop to e6, queen d7, maybe play bishop d5 at some nice point, and then compete with that bishop on that diagonal. But with this move, it seems like you're giving White a hook with the move a6, and he can wait around and play queen c2 and then play for b5 and then try to punish you on the queen side.
Okay, so I mean, you know, really by asking all of those series of questions that you were asking yourself, I think it really helps you discover an answer. So when you say to yourself, well, if I put my bishop on e6, then I really don't know what to do next. But by the fact that you've put your bishop on e6, you go, oh, now I understand. I've given myself 2 possibilities. I've given myself a first possibility of playing bishop to d5 to neutralize this bishop, or I've given myself the opportunity of queen d7, maybe neutralizing the bishop in a different fashion with bishop g4. So that's why I'm saying that once you ask yourself the question, am I going to play with c6? And if the answer is no, then you start to look for a scheme of development. If the answer is yes, then you look for a scheme of development like that. I think black is going to have to play with c6.
And if black has to play c6, why didn't black play c6? Leave that pawn on a2 especially, right? So now when you take, if c6, then I can play bishop e6 with tempi, right? Hitting the pawn on a2.
Well, if you start with c6, I was going to start with a4 anyway. But okay, fine.
Okay, that's fine. So I didn't lose a move. Now I get to play bishop e6.
Right. Yep. And you can do this if you like. What would you like to do after b5? So in every case, I'm playing for b5. I don't have too much else to play for. When you play rook b1 and b4, I mean, you know, you got to go b5, Jen. Come on. Ask your dad. He'll tell you all about it.
Yeah, he did learn from you. Yeah. Long-time English lover.
I know.
Or maybe, let's go back now, because now we're developing a point, and maybe why he felt he needed to play a6 was because b5 is coming so fast with a pawn on b5 that is not the rook. But if c6, a4, what about bishop h3 first then?
Yeah.
To gain a tempo, to get in your next move.
Exactly. So bishop h3.
So rook e1.
Rook e1. You gained a develop move essentially with your bishop on h3.
And now queen d7.
And now queen d7. Fair enough. This all looks very, very straightforward stuff. And again, it just feels to me like a lot of the classical Botvinnik games of his nice, peculiar way that he had of playing the English put a lot of pressure on his opponent.
So c5, you feel a5 is?
Well, whatever it is, it is. I mean, I'm playing to control some squares. Again, you started from a very interesting perspective, Maurice, which was that the computer and yourself, you were going 0, 0, 0, 0. This position is so drawn. And I'm sitting there saying, well, you know, like as a kid, going through the scholastics and the junior championships, I actually really enjoyed playing these positions for white, as I felt that I really knew what I was doing, and it's not so easy for black to discover an active plan. Let's refresh the board and tell me what's going on in the game position itself.
Well, 2 moves we got played, a4 and c6, and so the
both moves got played. Well, there you go.
But I will also tell you, now I'm looking at the engine after we had all this big discussion.
These discussions.
You know, useful to get the discussion in and then look to see what the engines think. The engines hate a6 and think that this move really gives white
a6.
something to work for.
Okay.
And think that c6 is correct.
Okay.
And after a4,
right.
now we start defending like an engine. a4, bishop h3 is correct.
That's the engine's move. They love gaining tempi. Yeah.
And now rook c8, getting off the diagonal.
Rook c8, getting off this diagonal so that b5 walks into a real problem.
With the c3 bishop,
with
indeed.
the c3 bishop. Now, I suppose that's true, right? Because if I move my bishop, then you'll play b5, b4. So, yeah, I suppose that is true.
You have to wait to play b5 now.
Right, something like queen b3. And I remember...
But what's the big deal? I mean, you're still getting what you're still playing your move b5, right?
Well, yeah, but what the computer wants to say is that black wants to clear this diagonal, right? Something like this. And what the computer also wants to say is that by playing the move a6, you've helped white because you've ensured that some lines are going to be open up on the queen side with a6, whereas the immediate c6, as suggested by the computer, means that you can keep the queen side lines closed.
Well, it still seems like a pretty rich game to me.
Absolutely,
Yes.
for
I mean,
me too.
sure, I wish there was knights on the board would make it even richer, but...
In view of what Maurice has been saying, by the way, with bishop h3, I might actually start with queen d2, with the idea that if you do attack my
love
rook,
it.
well, it's just like one of those things. Yeah, my rook might actually.
But this didn't happen because he did play a6. But you're saying that if this did happen,
he played c6,
you would have held off on a4.
Right.
I like that idea.
My rook would have been able to glide over to c1, where it's a little bit more useful than on the e file. But again, let's see what has happened in the game, because a6, a4, c6, we've got this on board. Now, I wouldn't hesitate. I play b5, but maybe I would think about queen d2 as well as a preparation for b5. But okay, what happens, Maurice, after the direct b5? Let the clash.
That's the move the engines really like.
Let the clash begin, right?
Pretty serious. I don't. I mean, personally, I look at the initiative for white right here, and it feels like white is fast. White is actually doing something.
White is doing something.
It feels really fast. His move b5 is very attractive right now. He doesn't have to explode, of course, but you were talking about this line, and after this capture, rook takes b5, and this is the old school Botvinnik stuff.
Yeah, I definitely live for this position.
This pawn is just going to come under heavy fire. You want to ditch it with everything off the board, and I mean, it's just terrible.
No.
So
the question.
This move a6 really bothers me, man. I mean, it just come hell or high water, whatever happens, you play c6 and let that position play itself. But that a6 move, because you think you're going to get the a file, to me, white wants to play on that side of the board and wants to see the board open. Right. So it doesn't care if you get the a file. It's like, so what? But to give white this hook. Now, the other thing about this, though, is maybe in some weird variation, like let's play this position, you can get this move.
Right.
Now, this requires that you be able to play this also at some point, because this pawn is going to come under fire.
Right.
But maybe you feel like you can fly this down the board somehow and be a fully distracting pawn. That's deep. If that's what you do, now we're in contentious land, because that's interesting. So maybe that's why he has his pawn on a6, and this is a position Magnus will have to evaluate. Is this indeed better for white? We know that white can get the center with a move like d4 and really blast the position open and ask black, is this going to be for real? Especially since you're going to still have trouble developing that bishop. But is this pawn enough of a distracting force? This requires some very intense analysis to see what happens. Maybe this is where we should start our analysis, as a matter of fact, because this is a contentious position. Yeah,
it's definitely double-edged. I just want to go back just a move or two here, Maurice. And I've gotten these positions. This is a exact type of positions many, many times in open tournaments against lower-rated opposition with black. And what my opponents would do to annoy me terribly is I'd play b5. They would play a6 takes b5. I would play a4 takes b5. And it's like they seize a disadvantage. They would play bishop d7. I would capture on c6. They would capture with the bishop. I'd capture with the bishop. They'd capture with the pawn. Now, it's 5 versus 5. It's clear I'm better because there's just this little button over here that's
You don't like
the
Swiss
weakness.
cheese?
Yeah. But it's only one weakness. They would put their pawn on c5. They would put their bishop back on f8 and say, look, I'm the lower rated player. All I'm trying to do is make a draw.
How effective is that strategy?
50-50.
Oh, wow.
Which was very annoying for me. So the question is just how big an advantage does white has? Obviously, you prefer white because, you know, black has weaknesses, white doesn't. But it is a kind of cynical way of play. Now, I don't recommend that way of play for Fabi, and I agree with you that much more contentious, where you're playing for 3 results, is the move a6, a5. But I got to tell you, I do like white.
I just checked the engine. They don't think black's that
bad
at
yeah.
all.
Okay.
And in fact, figured out if you could put your queen on e7, your position can achieve flow as black pretty easily.
Because then you can bring your bishop.
Because your bishop can come in the game even on f5 and look for, your chances there.
Right.
And that pawn on a5
is a passer.
It's passed.
I mean,
you get down the board pretty quickly.
Yeah, it may not get there really, really, really fast, but I mean, long term, it is a passer.
As long as you can't take it. Right?
Yeah, I'm not really.
A5, which is not
again, you guys are the big Sicilian players. You know, what you like when you're black and a Sicilian, and this kind of a Sicilianish endgame, you've achieved quite a lot already. I mean, on a good day, the bishop will come back. You'll double rooks on the c file. Keep in mind, queen e4 can sometimes be really an annoying move for the second player to face. Anyway, by the way, quick question for the panel. Who won the opening skirmish so far? Do you like Fabi's opening choice? Yes, no?
I like Magnus, but I play the dragon, so I'm a bit biased.
Okay, well that's okay.
And he's not known for getting like a huge advantage, so I feel like this something is adequate for Magnus's standards.
As a dragon player,
yeah.
Okay. And how about yourself, Maurice? You're a Sicilian player too.
I really feel like white is the one has the edge. Can just wait around and figure out the b5 break, because when you play a move like this one with a6 and c6, you're telling white that I'm ready for your break. That's your idea if you do it right now. But white might say, I'll just wait a few moves.
Sure.
What is your idea? And I'm going to play b5 when I feel I'm good and ready.
Right.
And so my problem is I'm challenged to find what white wants, what black wants to do.
Exactly.
And really show what black wants to do, because I don't see any easy breaks. This is the only one I see, and I'm deathly afraid to play it because it just looks like it opens up my king, and I don't know that my e4 push is going to have any kind of real effect. Okay. So to me, and especially since it opens up the 7th rank as well, white looks so secure back here in this position with no worries whatsoever. So it feels like the more you give him, it's like sort of the way to play for equality is to play for equality and not play for the dynamic edge in this type of position. That idea of maybe playing for a5 or what you did, you talked about weakening your c6 pawn, which I don't think Fabi wants to see against Magnus
necessarily,
because you know Magnus the technician. So I really feel like this move, he feels good about it. He's going to feel good about the idea of being able to play something like a5. I don't think opening the a5 gives him anything. So to me, white has something small here. Prepared to play the minority attack on this side. This is what we're talking about, is a minority attack.
Something at least he can nurse. I mean, he's got play
here.
You know what? It's similar to yesterday, in my opinion. It's similar to yesterday. You remember Fabi had that small edge with white?
Right.
Really small, but we liked it.
Yeah.
Bishop D2, it was the
Queen
same pressure on the
A7,
B7 pawn. Bishop
Rook
D2,
B1.
Queen A1,
Yep.
Queen and Rook B1, and
Yep.
that B7 pawn was going to feel the pressure.
Right.
And we said, you've got to play precisely here.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, Kramnik came on and said the same thing. He felt like Fabi didn't do the precise moves, nurse it the right way. But we felt like that was the way to play. If you had white, it was all you. I feel the same way about this position right now.
Which one do you think is more
Little
serious?
edge for white, and now it's up to Magnus to show his real class, his high-level class of how do I give a little bit more pressure to you as this position continues.
Now, I do think that that there were advantages yesterday, that Fabiano should have taken on A5 and then played Bishop D2. I saw on chess.com very, very, very nice annotations by U.S. champion Sam Shanklin. He's looking at each game very in depth. He felt that while white had an advantage, it wasn't serious whatsoever, that Queen C7, Rook B8, he was saying that Magnus would have been able to draw yesterday. It's a judgment call. I did like white. I do like white today. I think in both cases the advantages are there.
Speaking of our U.S. champion, Sam Shanklin,
Yes.
a lot of the time he's on Magnus's team, but he's not this year. He
I know
revealed
in the
that.
past,
Yeah.
he's actually had training camps
Well, that-
together with Magnus and worked on their
Exactly,
preparation.
for Karyakin, for instance.
Exactly.
But that's when he wasn't playing an American, so it was kind of nice to see that Sam is not on any team now, and that's why he's like doing some work. I mean,
Right.
why he's doing the analysis and sometimes guest
Sure.
commentating as well.
Sure. Well, I mean, he's such a strong player. I always felt that one of the things...
And preparer.
Yeah, that when, I was up against the Russians and I was playing against Russian players, it was like the whole country of Russia seemed to be helping Anatoly Karpov or Garry Kasparov at a time. And I just felt like, well, gee, with Fabi there, it would have been really nice to see all of the American team literally saying, here's some ideas, go get them, Tiger, kind of thing. So, yeah.
Although, speaking of that, we got a lot of reactions. I noticed we got some reactions on Twitter and on YouTube about Nakamura saying that he wanted...
Shocking comment,
That
yeah.
he was rooting for Magnus. And I was
Yeah.
thinking about it some more as well. And, he gets the question, and suppose in his heart he does kind of want Magnus to win for
Sure.
whatever the reason is.
Whatever, yeah, that's fine.
You got to respect him for not lying.
No, that's true too.
There-
I
like,
mean,
there
I
you go.
I just couldn't, let's
A
just
truth teller.
Yeah, I just couldn't imagine. Let's say Ding Liren in 2020 challenges the world champion Fabiano in 2020, Ding Liren, and Yu Yangyi, his greatest competitor in China, is asked, who are you rooting for? Are you rooting for Ding or are you rooting for Fabi? And Yu Yangyi says, I want the American to win. It's like, what?
But part of what makes
just can't
Nakamura
imagine
great is his honesty, his individualism. He hasn't ever really worked with, I mean, he has his longtime second, Chris Littlejohn, but he kind of does him, but he's done that his whole career.
He's in his own orbit, yeah. I mean,
So-
at one time he was working a little with Gary. That relationship went sour, but okay, he did have a little, but you're right. For the most part, he's very independent.
They asked him a question and he gave an honest answer.
Exactly, which is
know?
great. Great. Just
You
hard
would
for-
think, though, the American players are going to tremendously benefit from Fabi winning
Without
True.
the
question.
title.
Yeah.
And that if I were of that caliber,
Right.
I'm nowhere near, but if I were like Naka, Wesley, Sam, the whole Olympic team,
Right.
you would think it was like, listen, we need to win this title for the US of A
Right.
because that's going to benefit chess in the US. Now, after you finish winning the title, I'm going to come try to take you down.
And beat you,
Right,
yeah.
of course,
Which is legit.
which makes a lot of sense. But before that, I want to give you all my resources and help so that
Right.
you will surge and win the
Great.
thing and make it great, make chess great in America, right?
Right.
You would think.
Totally agree.
But
Bring the Disneys and the Coca-Colas
yeah,
and
bring
the
all the
Microsofts
sponsors
to the table.
There's not going to be just one guy who's benefiting.
Right.
There's going to be everybody. It's going to be the rising tide
Exactly.
lifting all the boats. So it's kind of surprising. At least from what we've seen, there's not a single U.S. player on Fabi's team.
Whoa.
Let's not.
I mean,
You
when
mean
I
like
say
elite
U.S.,
player?
top elite player, that's what
Elite
I'm talking
players,
about.
like-
Elite player. on his team. I mean, we know Rustam Kazimjanov is on his team.
Alejandro
Ramirez,
Christian.
very strong player, of course. Christian Kirilla of
Originally
Romania.
from Romania, but yeah, but he's American.
I mean, these guys, of course, these guys are all buddies and work with us. And
sure.
But I'm talking about
where's the Wesleys
very,
of the world?
very top.
Where's Ray
Wesley
Robson?
So, Ray Robson, Sam Shankland, Hikaru
Right.
Nakamura, the Olympic team.
I will tell you something, and I really, really do want to say I admired Victor Korchnoi greatly for this. He loved youth. He loved passion. He would have a Jeffrey Zhang on his team. Because you want, that 17, 18, 19-year-old guy saying, hey, why don't you play this? With passion. So if I had been advising Fabi, I would say, get a young person on your team. Who, when Sergei Kiriakin was 12 years old, and he was a coach for a world champion contender or something. I remember it was was it Ivanchuk? I'm just not 100% sure,
Yeah,
but I remember
he
was like the youngest coach in the history of the game, for a world. So I'm saying
One of them, you mean? He was one
I'm
of the
just
helpers.
saying that Fabi needs or should have had that kind of support, just like the Soviets
I will
did
say,
for their guys.
When I think about Fabi's team and the guys he has around
and he's
him,
got a great team.
those are also his people he's very comfortable with.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Good
I
friends.
agree.
People he can trust 100%. Nobody's gonna
Sure.
betray anything in that
Right.
nothing to worry about. That's also important. People you've known for years and you just feel great about.
A good
high quality,
relationship, yeah.
high character individuals that you battle tested and these are my boys. We go to war together and I don't have to think about anything at all. They're gonna live and die, or ride or die. That's the kind of attitude. So that you can see in that lineup. That's just great buddies.
Yeah, I think it seems like he's got a great team indeed. But we are going to take a quick break
I just want to say, before we take a quick break, I just wanted to say that we do have this move, Rook E1, and I see this move, Rook E1, as a preparation for a completely different approach. Not to go quickly B5, but to go quickly E4, followed by D4. And remember, I was talking about trying to get a king-side majority and using your queen-side minority. So Rook E1, little bit of a devilish kind of move to set up a long-term strategic plan. But yes, indeed, we're going to go on break. And before we go on break, remind us again who our guests are going to be.
Well, we have Chess Club founder Rex Singfield coming on after the break to follow up his interview
here
from
in
London.
studio?
Yes, he will be.
Oh, good.
He's
can
back
beat him
from
up
London.
a little bit. Yeah.
And then we also have Irina Krush and Fred Whiteskin coming on later in the show.
Oh, wonderful.
So stay with us, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Think about the match. In my opinion, it's difficult to see. It will be probably more interesting than the games. I believe they will be more interesting than the match of Carlsen against Kiriakin. But at the same time, it's difficult to say who is the big. I don't think it's quite level, except if they reach a tiebreak, and then I could see an advantage for Magnus.
I still think Magnus is the favorite, just because he has that level of experience. But anything can happen. I think one small lack of attention and one small lack of focus and distraction from Magnus can be all the difference.
He came very close to qualifying in 16, and I felt that he wouldn't have been a bad challenger in 16. I feel grown and improved since, and also I think stylistically he is a very interesting challenger for Magnus, because I think this match will be very, very unlike the previous one in terms of the way the challenger approaches trying to win it, because Sergei's approach was very much containment. I think it's extremely unlikely that Fabiano will be doing anything of the sort. I think it will be a much more open open contest with people going at each other a lot harder. I think people are very, very excited for the match, and it should be a very interesting spectacle.
Well, it will be very difficult, first of all, because Magnus plays also very good in rapid chess, and so he will not be afraid of tiebreaks, and Fabiano is more focused on a classical chess than in rapid. Also, I can say that I can sell some secret to Fabiano with discount.
Hello and welcome back to the World Championship edition of Today in Chess, as we are getting into this Game 4 battle between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana. Magnus playing with the white pieces. We're liking his game.
Well, it's been a reverse Sicilian where black has no kingside attack. So for sure, it's one of those positions that it's easy to like white. But every time you think, well, there's something serious, it's very, very hard to prove. So still quite a balanced position, I want to say, but a smidge of something for white.
Normal white advantage, though.
A normal
like
white
if you,
advantage.
Going into the game, you wouldn't expect.
Right. We're just going to go back up a couple of moves. We've got this position, and quite frankly, we were all expecting the move b5 to appear any moment. Magnus decided to do a slow play. He slow played the position with the move rook e1, which to me feinted with the idea of playing e4 and d4 in order to get a central pawn majority. After the move bishop d7, I expected e4, but came again this very slow play e3, queen f6, and now bishop e4. So white is looking for opportunities to playing d4, perhaps even f4, and maybe even queen h5. I think it's time that Fabiano started to respond a little bit more aggressively, and in this moment I've been looking at the move bishop f5. I see this bishop in the center of the board on e4, where it's eyeballing the queen side as well as the king side. I want to get rid of that bishop if I were black. I don't want this bishop to hang around.
Right,
Jennifer.
but you always got to deal with this move f4, like you were saying, right?
Oh, well, you think that after bishop f5, f4 right away? Ooh.
You don't like the looks of it?
I don't know. I
'cause
feel
the
like I'm exposing white's
Right.
king a little bit.
But now I feel bad about the move rook e1, you know? Like, I wish my rook were on f1, right?
Yeah, you might think that the rook on b1 should be on f1 or
Yeah, because
something.
if I did, pawn takes
Then-
e5 would be, like, crushing here,
Yeah,
right?
you win brilliantly.
If
You
I
win
could
in
play like
first.
that, just
Yeah, exactly.
put my rook on rook e and a half.
This
I
is-
would be a great player.
Rook e and a half? Oh, I like that. If you could combine control of both files
Well,
at
some
once.
players do that, right?
Right, and only later when do they clarify. Okay, so I am expecting a little bit of, coaxing in the position. I would have thought, Jen, another approach again. I keep invoking his name, but Michael Botvinnik. These types of positions, again, were the positions where I felt that Botvinnik was in a class by himself, and he really nurtured advantages from these types of positions. So we'll see if it's something that Magnus can achieve, but we have a special guest, Jennifer.
But you know that this is Magnus's cup of tea, a small advantage, but
That he
Fabi
enjoys.
has been defending very well this year, and not just this game, but this whole year.
Yeah, no, it has
2018.
been Fabi's a fabulous year for Fabi from Berlin onwards.
But we do have a special guest in the studio. He's back from London. St. Louis Chess Club founder and president, Rex Singfield, is with Maurice.
And we know Rex is an uber fan, having become a fan of chess since the 1970s when Fischer Spassky. Rex, you're now seeing this dream again of American players as Fabiano Caruana now plays for the World Championship. What were your impressions over in London?
Well, you're absolutely right. First, let me say at the outset, when I called in the other day, I forgot Anna's name, and I apologize for that. That was just sort of a sudden brain freeze, and no offense was intended. And of course, the tremendous following that she and Judith have is testimony enough, is incredible testimony to how good they are at what they do. And I also want to wish her a belated happy birthday. I understand yesterday was her birthday.
Oh, happy birthday,
So,
Anna.
yeah. And so Joy and I were over there, and it was fascinating just to be on the site of a world championship. But we had an extra duty. We had to observe carefully how they do things there. And they do a good job. It was an impressive layout because maybe sometime within the next 6 years, I think and I hope we'll be in a position to host a world championship match. And so I was I have to tell you, I was like a kid doing homework. So, all right, let's see how they do this in each and every room. They had a lot of breakout rooms. They had a lot of video presentation rooms and press rooms. And so a lot of thought and effort went into that, and I commend them for it.
You were something of a celebrity over in London, we hear. People were coming up to you and asking for autographs, selfies. Did you expect any of that?
No, actually I didn't. I was quite taken by surprise. I think the first day I was there, I gave 2 or 3 interviews. But the second day, I planned to go there and just enjoy it, sit back and watch the match. And I ended up giving 9 interviews to reporters of different press from
We see you there
Germany.
with Woody Harrelson and some of those interviews being given.
Yeah. Well, I told Woody Harrelson, if he's really fond of chess, that he should come to the St. Louis Chess Club, because even Gary Kasparov says it's one of the most important in the world. And I said, if you don't believe me, call Gary. So, but yeah, it was press all over the place. They were very, very cordial and nice, but some of them were a lot longer than I expected. And what was funny is someone came up, a lady came up from Norway Chess, said, I'm from Norway, I'd like to interview you. And I said, well, you folks interviewed me yesterday. And she said, no, that was the other channel. They're our competitor. I found that so amusing and heartening. I said, wow, look at this. 2 channels from one country. That's wonderful for chess.
And did you tell them that you're rooting for your boy Fabi?
You know, I felt I had to be a bit discreet. But when asked directly, I would say that, of course. But I wasn't out waving a flag or anything or trying to be in their face.
We did see a picture of you
Yeah,
with a flag there earlier.
Well, yeah, that's true. That was different.
And how did you feel about Fabiano's composure, demeanor, especially game 1 looked like he was going to die.
It did,
and
yeah.
managed to pull that off.
Right, and I remember, if I recall correctly, Yasser saying if he plays Rook G3, the game is over.
Yeah, well, that was Kasparov's immediate suggestion while he was on Skype with
Yeah,
us.
and of course I was looking at the computer too, and they had him down 2.7 or 2.71, and I go, oh man. I said, this is awful. And then when Carlsen retracted that rook rather than playing it to G3, I said, maybe there's a shot here. He had a chance. Otherwise, he looked stoically strong to me. Really, just like Sphinx-like. Fixed, a cool cucumber, as they say. I'm very optimistic by what I observed in his demeanor.
You were there for 2 games, right?
2 games, right.
After the second game.
Yeah.
And, the second game, he was doing all right with the black pieces.
He was doing all right. Not only was he doing all right, he was reeling off those moves really fast. And I think the message was sent that, hey, I've been here before. I know this, you know.
Do you get a sense in London that the fans are rooting for one side or the other? Or is it, like, what's the buzz in London around chess right now?
I heard some people saying, go Fabi. But otherwise, most people were there watching and not revealing what they thought. And any of the banter was more about what the game was at the time, not who they were rooting for. So I wasn't able to pick up much of that. But to the extent I did, I think there was a pro-U.S. sentiment. I can't say throughout, but I certainly sensed some of it.
Yeah, you would think it's not like when Nigel Short played, that Nigel played in 1993 with Garry Kasparov, that London would be a buzz with
Right.
chess fever. This one seems like it's more
reserved.
More reserved. Well, thanks so much for joining us. We
Thank you.
appreciate you coming in and giving us your insight as to how London was. And we look forward to rooting for the match the way you are.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Rex, just a
Yes.
quick one, just to confirm, this was your first World Championship match experience? You never went to Karpov, Kasparov in New York, or Kasparov and Nand in New York? You never visited a World Championship
No,
match
the last
before?
one I visited live was Steinitz and Zuckertort.
Okay, that was back in 1886.
1886.
Yeah, well, you had to work
You only
out.
went because it was in St. Louis.
That's exactly right, Morris.
Yeah, you had to work out the final details of the rules and regulations. No, I get that part. But never.
That's incredible that you've never been to a World Championship.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I felt the same way about the Olympiad, that I'd never been to one until Baku 2 years ago. But to think that you've never been to a World Championship, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And they did a good job projecting on the stage, observing the big glass, separating the players from the audience. I wondered what it was like behind the glass. You know, on the second day, Carlsen puts on a heavy jacket over his suit coat. And that was the first day, I apologize. Okay. And I was saying, boy, it must be cold. And the second day, he comes in, he takes off his suit coat. He's just playing in a shirt. I'm saying, I think they have HVAC problems here.
Well,
All right.
great.
Well,
Rex,
thanks
it's
again,
good to
Rex.
have you back.
And
Thank
Rex,
you.
what's the final score? Predict it.
I didn't hear any such predictions over
No,
there.
you.
No,
We're
you.
asking you. What do you think?
Oh. 2-1, Fabi.
2 wins, 1 loss.
Yeah.
And rest drawn.
Yep.
No tie break.
Oh,
Well,
I pray no tiebreak.
That's the line anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a good pick. 2-1 sounds like a really good pick, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 wins to 1 win. Thank you, Rex. Welcome home. Welcome home. Yeah, nice to have you with us, especially here in studio. It's snowing outside here in St. Louis, by
Oh,
the
it's
way.
so
It was just-
picturesque because it's kind of like the combination of fall and winter, right?
Well,
Here
it
in
just
St.
so
Louis, it's
somehow we
lovely.
kind of buzzed by the fall. We went straight into the winter. Now let's get into the game. Like I was saying, Magnus decided to slow play it with the move rook e1. Fabi went bishop d7. He said, "Okay, let me bring my pieces off the back rank." And with this move bishop e4, as I was mentioning, White's beginning to say, "Okay, I've got my bishop on this really nice centralized square. Okay," Fabi said, "let's trade off those light square bishops." And I think we're up to date with the play, Jen. We could easily see this move, queen f3, a move I had mentioned a moment or two ago. But this strikes me as a rather balanced position. Maurice, what do the engines say about this one? Because with the light square bishops coming off, that bishop on g2, that was the pride and joy. If
Well,
it's going to get traded, I don't see a big edge.
You give bishop takes, queen f3. The engines actually give bishop e6 as the prime way to play, as opposed
Really?
to bishop takes on e4, feeling that after queen takes, and
Okay.
takes, this position,
Is a little
they,
edge. Yeah.
they think is significant edge.
Really?
Well,
Okay.
now starting to reevaluate a little bit this position. There is this possibility of f4. b5 is still in a position. It really doesn't look like that much to my eyes. I agree with you.
I see. So did Magnus slow play by not playing b5 right away cost him
Well, I
his
think you answered your own
advantage?
question. That's
Yeah.
exactly what happened. Whether or not
Is that-
it cost him an edge is a different question, because this is one of those build them up positions, right? That
Right.
he's trying to go for, and Black is trying to neutralize before doing anything else. As we mentioned, it's not easy for Black to execute any pawn breaks or find a way to build up any kind of attack against White's king. White's king is perfectly safe in the main position, which we have here. Let's go back, actually. The position we have here as I take off my auto update. All right, so here, bishop f5, queen f3 has in fact been played by Magnus, so this is on the
And
board.
Bishop takes e4 is also on the board. Maurice.
Has it? Okay, so bishop takes e4.
Not bishop e6 as the computer wanted.
All right, so bishop takes e4 played as well. So a couple more pieces coming off that light square bishop that gives that pressure on the b line coming off as well, making b5 a little less potent, of course,
Right.
because of this pressure that we're seeing disappear from here. So this position, it's that same thing we talked about the linearity of the pieces that are
Right.
remaining on the board. No knights,
No knights.
or at least some kind of discrepancy, bishop versus knight, or just a pair of knights on the board. Knights are the jokers in chess. They're the wild cards. And whenever they leave the board and it's just straight line pieces, it becomes not so easy to attack points in a position unless you just simply have direct play on it. And if you don't, then generally speaking, it's easy to just oppose your pieces and defend, and those end games are generally drawn. So you have to be really precise, really exact, and also really dynamic in your play, which is why, yeah, as we were talking about the move b5.
Right.
Get that in, get flow going, get it quick, get something that shows that the pieces are, your piece is going to dominate another piece, like that bishop that was on that long diagonal. In this case, if you lose such a bishop, the question now becomes, now what? At least there's some structural issues on the king side. At least there's that in the position. But the more you look, the more you feel like Black should be able to handle himself in this kind of position.
And we do have that endgame, by the way, of queen takes f6 has been played. We're anticipating gf6 and e3 takes d3 takes e4. Yeah, this ending, and with this double set of double pawns, but this just doesn't feel like any kind of advantage for white to me. I just don't see how Magnus is going to squeeze anything out of this. Doesn't mean that he's not going to try. As we know, Magnus loves to play long games. But, you know, you look and you say, well, where's the advantage in the position for white? I'm having a hard time seeing it.
So it's not what, what would you have preferred Magnus to do to get a little bit more to chew on?
Well, I think that his play has been too hesitant. Rook e1 was fine, but I didn't like e3, bishop e4, a couple of moves, just let it slip. Here I can just see that black is ready to bring his king over to the center, put a rook on the d file, and maybe even one day play for b5. And that's a majority over there on the queen side. It's legit. I don't see why it's not a 3-result game. By the way, we have a phone caller.
Hello, welcome to the show, our first phone call of the day.
New York.
Yes, how you doing? This is Charlie from Queens. How are you?
Hi, Charlie.
I have 2 questions. They're short, but one of them is about, you said earlier in the match that around 6 and 7, one player would get 2 whites in a row. Right. I just want to know what the reasoning for that is. Right. And my second question is, I read in Andy Soltis' column in the New York Post about that they're thinking of changing the scoring system for draws and wins and give extra points for a draw. In other words, like instead of giving a half point, giving more points. I was wondering what you think about that change. So sometimes change isn't good just to change. I was wondering if you thought it was good the way it was, or that would prevent more draws, which in some cases, like this match, were 4 draws. I'll take my answers off the air. I just wanted to see what you have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie, for the question. Well, I'll take your first crack at it. I'm not sure about the Andy Soltis column that, and specifically about the draws, but I am aware about the Norway chess change of the rules coming up next year. And the idea is that in the classical game, the scoring system will be that if you win, you get 2 points. And if the classical game is a draw, each player will get 1 point, but then they'll play an immediate Armageddon game for another point. So I think it's a very innovative and an exciting format, and I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be really, really cool, and it will really shake up the world of chess if it proves to be popular. It's already popular with me, and they haven't even tested it yet. So we'll keep our eye out on that. Then as far as the World Championship match is concerned in the format, of course, from the last 500 years or so, whenever you've had a match, you've had alternating colors. So if you started with white, and there was an even number of games to be played, your opponent would have the last white. So somewhere around, I'm going to say, the Campomanes era in FIDE, they decided to create a World Chess Championship committee, and those guys are typical. Whenever you create a committee, you empower people to do stupid things. And the World Chess Championship committee decided, like, hey, look, now that we have the power to do something, we have to do something. So they decided in their brilliance that one of the ways they could shake up a match, if there had been lots of draws, say the first 6 games are drawn, oh, I know, we're going to give a player 2 blacks or 2 whites in a row to provoke a crisis in the match. And somehow they got this passed by the General Assembly, and the players have always been too weak to really give an argument against these FIDE administrators. So today the rule has been is that game 6 and 7,
right,
the players keep the same colors.
And that means that this is 3 whites out of 4 games right now for Magnus Carlsen.
That's right.
So he's going to get a crack in 6 and 7 as Fabi plays his last white for a little while on on Thursday.
Exactly.
So what do you think about this, and why do you hate it so much? Because you certainly don't seem to like this. You prefer just the pure alternation.
Right, of course. I mean, this is just creating a solution where there was no problem. Or creating a problem where there, however you want to look at it.
I assume, I mean, on the face of it, if the match goes the full distance, it seems so fantastic for the player who starts with white, because not only do they start the first game with white, they end the tournament with white.
Yeah.
I assume the logic behind it is that if for some reason it doesn't go the whole distance, then you offset starting with white with the fact that you're actually going to have one fewer white if the game goes 11 games. That must be the logic, right?
I'm glad that you can find logic in FIDE's rules and regulations. I mean, respect.
What would you prefer? Start with white or considering these rules?
Just alternate
oh no, I know.
Sorry.
I know, but if you Magnus got the chance to choose and he chose black first. I think it was because of that.
I thought it was just a drawing of lots.
I think I read, well, I'll confirm it, but I believe
fine.
I read that he got the right to choose by drawing the right lot, and
then he said,
chose to start with black. And that must be why, because if the match lasts 11 games, he'll have the extra white, right?
Correct.
So that must be why he chose it. Just like game theory-wise, if white is an advantage, you know that you're going to play the first few games.
Right.
So it's okay to have less whites then.
Yeah.
But since you don't know if the game 12 is actually going to be played, you might as well try to give yourself one more white.
With game 11, there you go. Maurice, you want to jump in there on Charlie's question? No, Maurice is saying we handled it just perfectly.
Yeah, we got all the salient points.
Okay, and we do have some more moves, by the way. After the trade happened, by the way, the very immediate b7, b5 by Fabiano, he got that move in, and I can understand his desire to do so. But by playing the move b7, b5, he does fix this pawn on b4 on a dark square. I thought that he might be a little bit more inclined to get his king in to the center. And after rook d1, I think we're up to date with the play. I would imagine just simply rook d8. And, well, I just don't see any reasons that Fabi should be unhappy with his position. This majority on the queen side it's a legit opportunity of getting a passed pawn over there. Maurice, what are you looking at over there? That's a completely different position. What do you got for us?
Well, you know, as usual, the ladies give us the fun stuff.
Of course.
And played some exciting games today in the Women's World Championship, the second round of the quarterfinals that saw Zhu Wenjun move on and also saw Katerina Lagno move on as well. But I was looking at this position because this was such an exciting game. The young player, Gulruk Begim Tokhiljonova, Gully Girl as we call her, she just regaled us with her play. It's a fantastic personality, upsetting player after player after player. But then she faced off against the big dog, Zhu Wenjun, who is the reigning women's world champion. And Zhu Wenjun had coasted through all her games so far. And this game, she did win. After a long game, it did take 81 moves to complete, but it should have been much quicker. And this was a dynamic moment in the game when after knight f6, Zhu Wenjun with the black pieces, b5, getting in this move, bishop e6, suddenly getting all the play in a Petrov as white did not play quickly enough and giving black the initiative. So she went for it with knight h4. She had to actually go for it even more so than Injinzi with the move g4. Just go all in. But she tried it this way, knight h4, b takes c4, bishop f5. And this was the moment when I actually came into the game as I was preparing to come here for work this morning. I came in at this moment when bishop b5 was on the board, and I'm looking at the position. I'm like, well, I don't know what exactly is going on. There's a threat on e6. And as I'm trying to get my bearings about the position, Zhu Wenjun dropped knight d5 on the board. And then I was really awake. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Because this threat on the knight is one, but the threat of bishop g5 was another, was absolutely serious and crisis mode suddenly for white. How do you deal with both these threats, particularly the one bishop g5? You can't just move your king because you hang your knight straight. So a big problem for her here. Now she tried to mix things up with bishop takes e6, bishop g5 anyway, and now the move f4, an attempt to somehow get something going with this tactic, bishop takes, Bishop takes with check, hitting the rook, king takes, and now rook ef1, you're pitting the bishop, you're preparing the move g3, you're back in business until rook e1 check appears on the board, and Kersplat, the queen is pinned, cannot capture, so you only can move your rook away and allow your queen to go from the board, and that was all she wrote after this move. Now, big advantage here for, I mean, you got a queen sitting on the board, which is huge, already a big deal, and we're going to get Grandmaster Irina Krush on the line in a second. King g8, you would think this was over until after g4. She played queen takes g4. There was no reason to open the file to see bishop g7 suddenly land on the board. And wait a minute, what's going on? King takes rook g1, and after just a few moves, suddenly knight f5, rook f8, knight d6. She was just down massive material, now only a pawn down. The game takes another 50 moves, so not so easy. White had drawing chances, to be sure, but it did not work out. I mean, it must have given all of Drew Wingen's fans heart palpitations to see the position be what it was and end up here, but it was not enough as the women's world champion survived what wasn't her best game, to be sure, of the tournament and ended up moving on. But we do have a guest all the way from Brooklyn, you know, a fellow Brooklynite when you see one, and dear friend to the club, and is it 7-time U.S. Women's Champion, working on number 8 soon?
Yes. Hello,
Grandmaster Irina Krush. Hey, Irina.
Hey, welcome to the show, Irina.
Thank you. I could tell which game you were talking about, Maurice, without any of the players' names.
So you've still been following the Women's World Championship.
Well, yeah, of course. I spent my morning looking at the games.
Right.
And I wasn't sure because, you know, sometimes when somebody gets eliminated from the tournament, they're like, forget about that tournament. Let's look at everything else. But what do you think so far? Who's your favorite? Which of these 8 remaining, well, not 8, but which of these remaining women do you think are going to win the title?
Well, I think, first of all, you know, 2 of the matches are going to tie breaks tomorrow, and today was a big day. There was a really interesting game, Abdul Malik versus Maria Muzichuk, and I think Abdul Malik is really going to be haunted by her 34th move, because, you know, she was up in exchange in a pretty normal-looking endgame where definitely Black had compensation, but it didn't seem necessary to lose that. And then she had a simple kind of like 2-move calculation to make in move 34, which would just like give back the exchange, but get into an endgame with like knight versus bishop that was pretty much going to be impossible for Black to win. I think from a practical point of view would have been better for Abdul Malik, and she missed that. She blundered instead and went on to lose with the white pieces. So I would give Maria Muzichuk the advantage in the tie breaks. I mean, she's been in this position before, and I think she'll work her magic again. And I would probably give the advantage to Anna Muzichuk also in the tie breaks tomorrow versus Kostenyuk. Their match has been really even in these 2 games, but I feel like where they agreed to a draw today, I guess White made a move and offered a draw and was accepted, but looks like Black could have pressed on with no risk. She actually was just going to be a little bit better in that end game, and I feel like, you know, you got to do everything you can, squeeze out everything you can if the position allows it. So I'm not sure. Sure, she had more time also and like a little bit of a better end game. So
Irina, you sound like you're ducking the question, though. The question was, who do you think is going to win?
First of all, people are not even guaranteed to advance. So first, I'm talking about what we're going to see tomorrow. But I mean, if those 2 advance, and then we have Lagno and Ju, yeah, I think probably. Well, actually, I'm not sure how the final round pairings would work out, but I guess to me a logical final would be like Ju versus Anna Muzichuk.
And Irina, you just got back from Khanty-Mansiysk yourself. You won your first match in a thrilling tie-break victory over Ina Gapanenko, where you actually just went 2-0. And then you played against Zhu Wenjun in round 2. Tell us a little bit about Khanty-Mansiysk. What's it like there, and what was your experience in the 2 matches you played?
Yeah, well, I mean, my favorite part of being there was definitely playing chess. You know, I enjoyed that more than I enjoyed, dressing up in like very warm clothes to just be able to go outside without freezing. It's a very cold place, although apparently this season was a lot warmer than it was 6 years ago when we had like -20 temperatures, and this was a lot more bearable. It snowed a few times. I think it was going to snowing a lot more when I left. What else can I tell you? I enjoyed the nice restaurant I found by the playing hall. It was a Georgian place that I ate in like every single day after the game finished. And what else do you want to know about, Jen?
Well, Irina, you won your first match, but with the way the pairing structure worked, once you got through your first match against Gapanenko on tiebreak, you had to play the #1 seed.
And reigning world champion.
And she had a day off. So how'd you feel about that, like looking at the pairings chart? Were you kind of like, man, I wish my rating were a little different, like either lower or higher, so I didn't have this like gauntlet in round 2?
Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely didn't have that that feeling like of like, oh no, like who am I facing in round 2? I was looking forward to that because I kind of feel like at this point, you know, you're gonna have to face these players at some point in the competition anyway, and whether you go home in round 2 or 3 or even 4, just doesn't make any difference at all. You know,
right.
Like for me, you know, like yeah, it's So I didn't mind facing her in round 2. I thought it was actually a great opportunity. You know, it's not that easy to get a match against the women's world champion, even if it's just a 2-game match. So I was pretty happy about that. Even though it sent me home kind of early, I would have liked to play a few more games. But it was a good opportunity, and my games were, you know, pretty close, I would say. I mean, I lost the first game, and
I saw that. She just nursed this endgame edge against you. I just wished like you had had a day of rest like she did. Is that very significant in these matches? Do you give the edge to the people who win in the classical portion so they actually get a day to prepare and rest?
Well, I think it was probably good for her. You know, she seemed to be kind of sick. You know, she was coughing all the time during our games. So I do think, you know, any days off that she could get would be good for her. And, you know, I think she's the only player so far who has not had to play any tie breaks.
Right.
That was one thing I noticed. Yeah, out of all the people left in the field, she's the only one who managed to get through in all the regular limit games. Isn't it a big advantage? I mean, it's helpful. The days off are really good because the tie break days are very intense. You know, it's basically like everything, your life is packed into those 2 games. You know, you got to prepare for white, for black, for what they might play in rapid and blitz as opposed to what they might play in regular time controls. So from that point of view, it's a very, very intense day. It's not like you just stroll in and play a couple of rapid games like I will tonight at the Marshall Chess Club.
Irina, there's some talk, given, for example, the luxurious pace that the men play at, and also the fact that WGM Jen only gets to be champion for but a few months, about whether or not this system is fair. Now, it may be extremely exciting, of course. 64 players also get a chance to play for the title. But is there any talk among the women that the guys get basically to do this kind of candidates followed by a match, also 2 years to be able to enjoy the title, versus the situation that it seems is in the women's tournament, which it just seems like it's a little bit chaotic. It could be a match, it could be a knockout, and it's always a compressed period.
Yeah, you know, Maurice, I want to just remind you, like, it was only a little bit more than 10 years ago, I think in 2006, when we had the same Women's World Championship knockout tournament. We had to play tiebreak games on the day of the second game. So you were playing late into the night, and then the next morning, you just had to go and play, you know, match number 2 or whatever. Right. So, I mean, and that was something the men didn't have. They had those days off for the tie breaks, which of course makes sense. And the women were playing them after regular classical games up late into the night. So that was seemed a lot worse. I mean, they did fix that after that championship in 2006, so that we have a special day for tie breaks. You know, I don't think that anyone is unhappy that things are moving to a candidate system like the guys have. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Speaking of the guys, what's your take on Caruana Carlsen? Who's going to win? What's the exact score going to be? Who do you want to win?
Yeah, I'm not so good with the predictions, but, you know, I mean, I definitely hope for just the best player to win, you know, and of course, since Fabi is representing the U.S., you know, I'm more I'm more leaning towards him, but not because I don't like Magnus in any way. I'm actually a big Magnus fan as well, and I think this is just a great match, and I hope chess wins.
Oh, that's sweet. That's a good way to put it. What do you think of the match so far? I assume you've been following the games.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked game one, you know, and I'm so happy that Carlsen is playing the Sicilian. You know, I mean, I think that just makes me really happy to see these kinds of openings. You know, I'm a Sicilian player myself, and for him to start with the match with a Sicilian, that was great. And I really liked the way he played that game. I mean, I thought it was just a great game by him, and it was really just like, you know, it was too bad for him that he couldn't convert that, but obviously a good save from Fabi. And then since then, it's been, you know, more or less a close fight.
Right. And what Sicilian do you believe that Magnus is going to uncork if Fabi goes for d4? Hasn't been getting a lot from the bishop b5, so...
Oh, I guess my guess would be the Sveshnikov. Now that I was also wondering about that, right? But I mean, he's starting with knight c6, so the only thing that the top players really would use that move order for is the Sveshnikov, and that's something Anna Muzichuk is going to, you know, seems to be serving her well. So yeah, I'm thinking maybe that's his idea.
We were thinking that maybe he was trying to play your fave, the classical or four-knight Sicilian, and just doesn't mind playing against knight c6. Even thinks those lines after bishop b5 are good for him. So it's kind of like a little fake out.
That's true. That's a possibility as well. And I can say, you know, after studying the classical Sicilian a lot for my first match against Ina Gapanenko, that there are some interesting lines there. You know, the rouser black has a big choice.
Right.
That's, you know, white kind of has to go for the rouser, and then like so many different systems that black is the one choosing. So maybe he's got something there.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, it's good to have you back with us, Irina. I just wanted to say that to get to Conti, it's actually not that easy. How did you travel, by the way? Did you go through Moscow, or could you go out? Did you take another indirect flight?
No, yeah, I think you basically have to go through Moscow. I think all the players are going through Moscow. It was a little unfortunate because for people coming from New York, you had like a 12-hour layover in the airport, and it was just unavoidable. It wasn't like, you know, there were better options. It was just like that was the only one, so I had to spend 12 hours. So it was basically like 2 days of traveling, and that was hard. It's I've noticed that Hansi has been the hardest place for me to get adjusted to in terms of time. So I did get there early, but the beginning is just very miserable, you know, where you don't know what time of day it is, you're sleeping during the day or awake at night, there's no sunlight, so your body has no real idea. Right. You know, I basically got started to feel fine after I played my first game. So then I was into their schedule, and, you know, then it was fine.
Sounds like the Olympic team's going to have to show up a week early when you guys go to play in a couple of years there.
Well, you know, it might be better in the summer, though, because it's going to be in the summer. Because, like, I think the lack of sunshine is really a big factor, because even when you're awake, it feels like it's night. You're always tired. You know, you just, like, when it's bright, it's just gray, you know? And I think it took me like 5 days until I saw the actual sun there. That was great.
What a challenge for the ladies, though. I mean, the ladies have to play, all the ladies who are remaining, I mean, it is getting even less and less light as the winter proceeds, plus the cold weather as well, the inclement conditions. Doesn't sound like fun times for a Women's World Championship.
Well, fun if you win the crown.
Oh, yeah, but boy, look what you have to go through.
Like the snow, it's really beautiful. I don't want to say that it's all bad, because, yeah, you know, if it's only like 0 degrees, it's pretty comfortable. And the organization is very good. Yeah, I wanted to mention that the playing hall, it's a great venue. I personally really like it. They give us like food and snacks throughout the game, constantly refreshed. They're, you know, giving us obviously transportation back and forth. They have people who greet us, you know, take our coats. Girls working there are very friendly. So I think the organization is on a very, very good level.
Yeah, I've noticed they've got great tweets actually at Ugra Chess. So if you want to continue to follow that tournament, not only following the games, you get a lot of color, interviews, polls via their Twitter feed. Thank you so much, Irina, for joining us. That's Grandmaster Irina Krush, 7-time.
Whoa, Irina, just before we go, we're on game 4. The last move was King G2. Sweetheart, give me your insights into this position. Who stands better and why, and what's your prediction?
Wait,
I
one
think
second. You're talking about the
think we need
Carlsen
a position
Caruana
here.
game, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
The last move was King G1 to G2 by white, and it's in this ending of 2 rooks.
Yeah, I see it. I see it now. I just pulled it up on Chess Bomb.
And?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty even to me. I mean, white's pawn is on a dark square on b4. That is obviously the key factor here. Black's rooks are on the open files. So I don't really see white winning this unless he at least gets like a king to f5, which is unlikely.
The king, f3, g4, f5, John. Why do you say unlikely? I can see a direct path.
Yeah, but I mean, black will, either move the king up or play h5, maybe king g7, g6, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think he'll try to stop that from happening. If that king was an f5, I would be, a little bit more concerned.
So you reckon a draw is the most probable?
Yeah, I think it's the most probable. Yeah, and I just have to say I love the opening choices of this match. I mean, seeing some variety like the English opening, the Sicilian, d4 for Magnus. I think, the opening choice I'm pretty happy about.
Very good. Thank you, Irina. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Maurice, we have a couple more moves. We do have, after rook d1, rook d8, the immediate rook d1 to c1, by the way, was played by Magnus.
Right, the issue of keeping rooks on the board, we talk about which pieces you keep on the chessboard, and you have to have a real feel for that intuition. This rook e d1, bishop f8, ab5, ab5, king g2, and then rook d8, and no, we keep more pieces on.
Right.
Keep them on. And the question of pressurizing a position, the point that Irina made about somehow getting the king so he can attack this pawn. This pawn is the other weak pawn in black's position that white has actual clear access to. But how do you pressurize it? Remember, you have a bishop, a monochromatic piece. It can't change colors. So this bishop can't suddenly attack the c6 pawn. It's not going to happen. This king is going to find it very difficult to come over and help attack the c6 pawn. So how do you pressurize the position? How do you make any how do you tie black down? How do you make black feel like I'm on the defensive? You'd have to double on this pawn, 2 rooks, and hope that both black's rooks are suffering on that square as well, because otherwise black will just ignore it and hit on your b pawn and say, you have to defend that while you can have my c6 pawn while I win your b pawn. So this is going to be white's only chance, is somehow get this play going, and then at some point also pay attention to this king side as well. So we're looking at a long, slow play build-up that has been characteristic of this game so far. Where does the white king go? How does the king side pawn structure suit itself? Magnus will be inspecting every possibility of construction of his pawns going up the board. F4, of course, is the natural one, but looking at G4 and H5 and seeing what are the niceties here of constraining this side once the liquidation happens on this side as well. Still a long game ahead. I would say it looks like they could just accept a draw, or more likely, Magnus was thinking, we're going to be here a few hours. You guys better relax. I want to see what this position is all about, especially for Magnus in positions where he doesn't think he can lose. He will just keep playing.
Absolutely. And there is one idea that I do find attractive for Magnus. Let's say in this position, king g7, that's a very good start.
That is actually what was played.
Excellent. King f3. So the idea here is not necessarily to go king g4, f5, as much as it is, I really want to provoke the move h5. If we could just put the move h5 on the board for a second, then I want to play h4. And I remember this as a gift, really, from Bent Larsen. I just didn't appreciate how good the move h4 was in that specific position, because the idea is to play g4 and to get a passed pawn, a passed h-pawn. And this could be potentially where white could use his majority somehow. If he could get in the move g4, provoke a capture, g4, provoke a capture. Now, I don't know, rook a2, rook a2, bishop to e1, And now we see that if white could play h5 check and king f5, he's in there with a shout. He's getting some initiative. And this is what I think Fabi just simply has to avoid. He can't allow this past h4 pawn.
Right, and Magnus back here after king to g7 did play the move bishop to e1.
Attacking the pawn on c6.
Getting pressure on c6, forcing a rook to defend that pawn for the moment. And
right.
You see the reason why he took his rook off the open file, which traditionally people would say, well, it's an open file. Why would you give it to a rook? Rooks
right.
belong on open files. Yes, but semi-open files can also be just as sweet, if not sweeter, because a semi-open file, there's a pawn remaining.
Right.
If it's not yours, that is, then all the better. And if it's backward, as this one is, then even more so sweet. So he's got this semi-open file with a weakness and a backward pawn. The move c5 doesn't look like it's coming with any kind of effect anytime soon. So black will have to use a rook to defend that. And that's what we're talking about, the potential of doubling on this pawn and maybe forcing black to defend twice. So that will start to tie black's pieces down. And then white will look for that energy on the other side as well. So this position is not just drawn.
Right.
That is clear. White, Magnus's endgame virtuosity will be on full display as he looks now to see if he can milk this position for all it's worth.
A little bit. Thank you, Maurice. And Jennifer, this is actually quite unique. We have a caller, but I can't ever remember. St. Louis is calling. St. Louis.
Yeah, welcome to the show from St. Louis. Let us know your name and your question.
Hi, my name is Jim.
Hi, welcome to our show.
Yeah, my question is, so what do you guys think that either one of the competitors are going to have to do to break this string of draws? Maybe a novelty opening? Or, I mean, what do you think we're going to see, you know, to break this pattern of draws?
Right. Well, thank you for the question. I remember one particular World Championship match that was taking place in New York City, in the Twin Towers, and it was between Garry Kasparov and Vishy Anand. And help me out here, Maurice. I think it was 8 consecutive draws.
That is correct. It's a record.
Right.
Never been seen at the beginning of a match. There have been consecutive draws inside of a match that have been longer. Famously, Kasparov-Karpov, 1985, where they had 17 straight. 1984, actually. The
84-85.
84/85, because the match took months.
Right.
48 games, in fact. But they had 17 straight draws in the middle of the match. Now, that is a serious record. But to start a match, 8 straight draws was this one in 1995, Kasparov-Anand, that was played in New York in 1995, as I said. 7 straight draws in Magnus's last match was the second number to start a match. That is him against Karyakin.
In New York.
Also in New York. You know, my hometown is supposed to be a bit more contentious than that, but it's like 15 straight draws to begin a match. Sounds a little bit limp, wet noodleish, but it's hard to break through in the beginning. Very hard, and I don't think you have to do anything to answer the caller's question, but keep playing chess, keep playing good moves, because let me tell you, you might want to win, but you sure as heck don't want to lose.
Right.
And so you don't want to do something funky and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I just lost. So they're going to just keep looking for their chances, looking to milk their opportunities and see if something arises out of the games. They've got plenty of arrows in that quilt. And they're going to say, let's just keep shooting and see if the guy misses something and lands a mark. But no reason to go completely insane to try to win that first game. By the way, the game that Anand won finally against Kasparov, that was game 9, he didn't do anything spectacular. He just kept playing he played a Sicilian, got in this idea on the queen side with b5, squeezed Garry, and that was all that she wrote, winning that game.
Yeah.
Garry came right back with a dragon and blew him off the board and then went on and just started winning a lot of games. Sometimes it just takes a game for it to get going.
Well, that was one of the things I wanted to say about that match, especially because I remember it so vividly, these 8 draws. But then once there was a win, it was like a dam burst. And then winning became easy. So at a certain moment, we kind of fall.
For Garry.
Well, okay,
Anand didn't
won,
win another
and then
game.
Garry won, and then
it didn't go back and forth.
No,
and then
it was Garry.
But in this match, you feel like once one player wins, What do you think of Rex's prediction of 3 decisive games? Do you think that's about right?
I think that's very fair, actually.
Yeah.
I do see that as a way, as a pathway to a Fabi victory.
So we're due one. If there's going to be 3 and there's only 12 games.
Well, I predicted Game 4, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, let's hope it's not Game 4.
Yeah. Well,
if it's not Game 4, since I predicted Game 5, then automatically I win.
Wait, this is Price is Right?
Because
this is not Price is Right.
I'll be closest, that is Price is Right. I'll be closest to the answer no matter what. You guys will be left in the dust. And I can either be 5 or over, and I get the win.
Hey, no, I think it's like the world. If it revolves around, it's closer to 3 again.
The world.
But I don't think it's going to be all draws, so.
No, so it was actually quite strange. Tony Rich, in his narrative of how Fabi was going to win the match, began with a victory from Magnus. Then he saw Fabi tying the match up, taking the lead, and winning the match. So whatever the narrative, I'm kind of with Rex on this one. I do see 3 victories out of the 12 games.
We should point out that in the history of these World Championships,
these 12
not 12 gamers, we can go all the way back to World War II, post-World War II. We're talking about World Championship matches that went more than 20 games, 24-game matches, with the majority, with the norm in the long matches.
Say from Bonvidic onwards, yeah?
Yes. The score, and I will get the exact number, but the score for the person who is ahead
after
4 at the 4th game or any time after, and I'm talking about in long 24 games, which you think would not make a difference, but the score is something like 16-4, some number, some ridiculous number, that if you're ahead as
in favor of the leader,
the leader takes a lead at Game 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, any point after Game 4, the score is atrocious for the person who's behind, which doesn't seem like it should be the case in long matches especially. In short matches, you would anticipate it. A 12-game match, take a lead late. Yeah, that sounds right. Although, that's not necessarily that true either. Magnus, for example, was behind at Game 8 of his last match against Koryakin and still came back and won the match. So it's and there's another match, I don't remember which one it is, that was the case as well. So it's not, it doesn't seem like it should be decisive in the longer matches, but it has been the case that the number is simply out of this world. That the person who's leading at or after 4 wins something like 80% of the time.
Wow.
Which is incredible.
Well, for me, of course, it was the 1972 match. Bobby Fischer loses the first game, forfeits Game 2, so he's down 2-0, wins amazing Game 3 with Knight H5, but now I've already forgotten what was the result of the 4th game in that match, because I'm thinking that Boris had the lead after 4 games. He certainly had the lead after 3. He was leading 2-1. I mean, after 3. So we'll have to just double check. And here, again, we have some of this marvelous archival footage.
Right. This is also being used in the fireside chats that we've been filming, going over the most memorable World Championship matches. And indeed, there he is, Bobby Fischer, the great.
And look at the hands again. Just to emphasize the hand size. Amazing of Bobby Fischer. But I remember this from ABC Wide World of Sports. He finally had settled down for Game 1, and he's about to play Knight G8 F6. And watch how he also, so the knight is facing Boris Spassky. But then he's going to swing the knight so that the face is to the
This
side.
is something we've talked about on the broadcast before. Right.
And because of the way he moved that knight, that influenced me in my games to do the same thing. That, you know, I would play Knight G8 F6 and put the knight on the side because I wanted to imitate Bobby Fischer.
By the way, he did win. The Game 4 was a draw in that match.
So Boris led after 4.
Yeah. Well, Boris led at the fourth game. Because of that forfeit, though.
Right.
Because of that forfeit only.
Right.
But then Fischer won Game 5, tied it up.
Tied it up.
Won Game 6.
And took the lead, and that's all she wrote.
Won Game 8, and ran away.
Ran away, yeah. Wow. Amazing.
And also, we should point out, some of the wins the rules were different.
Of course.
Because the champion kept the title in case of a tie.
Right.
So many times, even though the champion was behind or the champion took the lead at that point, the champion was able to tie it up at 12-12 in many of the matches. Because Botvinnik Smyslov, for example, was a tie. Karpov, Kasparov was a tie in one of the matches that
Seville.
He had to do that one in Seville. So sometimes few times at least, the champion had the edge because they kept that title in their pocket if it was a tie at the end. It was a 24-game match, and it ended in a tie.
Right.
Also, famously, of course, Kramnik versus Peter Leka.
Yes.
Also ended in a tie, and that one kept the title in Kramnik's pocket.
But that's not what we're hoping for this time, guys.
It can happen this time.
It can happen.
It can happen because
there's
they're
a
going to have a
tiebreaker.
tiebreak after.
Oh, that's what I meant. To see a tie. Yeah, we're
right.
hoping that won't occur. But the game is going under the path that Irina Krush predicted, with the king trying to come to g4 to f5, but of course Fabi well poised to meet that idea with king to g6.
Right.
And we're going to leave you, actually. Irina had come to talk about the Women's World Championship underway. We're going to leave you with a fireside chat about the first Women's World Championships in history and the incredible women who starred them. Veria Menchik, the 9-time World Women's Champion, and Sonia Graf.
Sonia Graf.
Well, one of the most intriguing World Championship matches of all time was between Veria Menchik and Sonia Graf. And this is one that really could be made into a movie. And I know, Jen, this is one of your favorite topics to talk about.
Well, absolutely, because the thing about chess, and particularly this Women's World Championship in 1939, is the way that chess intersects with the history of the world. And no more time is that statement more apt than the 1939 Olympiad held in Buenos Aires in Argentina. And this was both an Olympiad for the Opens and also a Women's World Championship. But it wasn't a match, it was more like an open tournament and the best woman would win. So there was Veria Menchik, who was already a 7-time Women's World Champion. So she was coming in as a heavy favorite. They set sail from Europe in July of 1939, having no idea, of course, that they would not be coming back, some of them.
The war was about to break out in Europe.
That's right. So the tournament began in August in Buenos Aires. And actually, in the case of Sonia Graf, who was living in Germany at the time, she was told by Goebbels, the minister of Nazi propaganda, that she could not play for Germany because she was so vocal against the Nazi regime.
Ooh.
So she got stripped of her flag and had to play under the flag of liberty. She ended up getting second in the tournament, second to Veria Menchik, who just got 18 out of 20 points, completely crushed the field.
Wow.
And she was winning in her individual game against Veria, so she was ever so close to becoming the Women's World Champion. And I always think of that as a bit sad because Sonia was such an incredible figure when it comes to her character. And she was an author, bon vivant, one of the people who really showed how chess could leave you this life of adventure.
Right.
But she didn't win the championship. Veria Menchik did. The very sad thing about Veria Menchik, she did go back to Europe, unlike Sonia Graf, unlike Najdorf, and she died in the London Blitz in 1944.
One of the bombings.
Exactly. But Sonia knew that, after Goebbels said that about her, it was pretty clear that
she wasn't going anywhere. No.
she wasn't going to survive. So she stayed in Argentina, ended up immigrating to the United States, and actually won a couple of U.S. women's championships.
Right.
Another player who also ended up staying in Argentina, who's very well known to our audience, is Mikhail Najdorf.
Absolutely. Well, in fact, the entire Polish team said, we're not going to go back to Poland. And they all stayed, as did many, many other European players, saying, look, the outbreak of war in Europe, it's just not safe. And
they were mostly Jewish. They were just going to get killed.
No question about it. And if you stop and think about it, how the heck are you supposed to get back to Europe anyway? I mean, it's not like you're just going to catch an international jet flight. You're going to take a ship. And how do you know the ship's not going to get blown up?
All the bombings that were going on.
Absolutely.
And the relevance of that also to the World Championships, because you have Alekhine who's sitting there waiting for a challenger, but nothing can be done.
Absolutely, you
because
can't play.
There's war going on.
Sure.
And so he sits and he's depressed and he's waiting around for a challenger all those years while the war is going on.
Exactly.
And at the very end, when the war finally stops, he gets a bid that says he's going to be, he can finally play again, and then he dies in his hotel room.
Exactly.
And so the war had such an impact on chess and the history of the World Chess Championships.
And not just the men's, as you mentioned with Alekhine, but also the ladies. So in the case of we know what they did to solve the World Championship. Now we have a vacant title. What did they do in the case of the ladies? It wasn't always match play, it was tournament play. So did they just continue the tournament play?
Well, the next Women's World Championship, if I recall correctly, was Bykova and Rudenko. Those were
Soviet at the time now.
Yes, but with Vera Menchik dying in 1944, I mean, what a tremendous loss for the chess world. You know, Vera Menchik was way ahead of her time. She was the first woman that would play against the top men of her day.
Yeah.
And in fact, there was famously a Vera Menchik club.
That's right.
Which was supposed to be for men who lost to her.
And there was a very elite group of names in that club, wasn't there?
Exactly. It wasn't a club that you wanted to join, but they almost took it seemed like there was a lot of camaraderie. Like she was a really nice person, and it's just devastating to see about, we really could have had even more from these players, you know, more stories, more games. Sure. And I think that's what's so amazing about chess history, how it's an art that we can look at the games, and it also intersects with history itself. Right. And for children especially, that can, you know, teach you about these wars. World War II had a massive impact in the chess world, but particularly in women's chess, killing this grand figure of chess who was the first woman to compete on the equal terms with men, way ahead of her time. Right. Just terribly sad.
Really the Judith Polgar of the world, and that exact moment. Also, of course, you mentioned the loss of Alexander Alekhine, but there were many grandmasters that simply died by hunger or disease, starvation. I mean, these two world wars devastated Europe and devastated the chess world. Indeed, and it led to a rethink of how the World Championships would be run from that moment on, the advent of FIDE taking over as an international body, and the age really of the private World Championships ended right there with the war. Closed out. A very important point in chess history.
Hello and welcome back to Carlsen Caruana, where we are deadlocked going into Game 4. 1.5 points for the Norwegian reigning champ and 1.5 points for the first American challenger to contest the undisputed title since Bobby Fischer, Fabiano Caruana. Now in this game, are we also deadlocked?
We certainly do appear to be, that's the case. Essentially 5 versus 5, 2 rooks apiece, materials dead even. Black's king, you might say, is actually a little bit more active than White's king. That's not a salient factor. Usually in these endings, it's all about passed pawns. Neither side has passed pawn at the moment. There is a way for Black to try to create a passed pawn with c6, c5. I'm thinking after king e6, however, the position is simply so balanced that a draw is really, really highly probable at this point, Jennifer. There's just not enough.
Bet the house on it or no?
No, but the garage. Maybe not the whole house, you know.
The beach house?
Yeah, the beach house, right.
Way to commit.
Yeah, but no, I do believe that we'll probably see something in the near future, like a move like Rook C1, where just a lot of trades end up happening. And, you know, it's funny, the first 2 games featured Rook endings, where both sides enjoyed the advantage of a pawn that wasn't meaningful.
So keep going. If Black were to, where does Black play here? And now if you go after the pawn with Rook H6.
Then probably something like check. And I'll come over here.
You will return the favor?
Yeah, you attack my pawn, I'll kind of attack your pawn. And just, I just see a lot of pawns leaving the board. Maybe exactly, by the way, here, at this point, ooh, no, it doesn't want to do it. I could have gone king d7 as well.
And now with king e3.
I'll check you. I want you to determine where
I
you're going to go.
see what you're saying. So after king e2, Rook b2 check, if I really want to make progress at some point, I'm going to have to play like king d3.
Right.
But now I really am.
Or you're probably actually going to have to go king to d1.
Okay, so this just leads to nowhere.
Exactly.
Oh, and after king d1, you're going to play Rook g2 again?
I'm not sure. I thought that there was going to be a massive, how do you say, grabbing
vacuuming.
Of the cleaner lady who is going to appear on stage or something like that, where all of these pawns get vacuumed off the board. And I'm just suggesting this Rook ending. I think I could have probably played a little bit more precision.
Because here you always have to check the pawn endgame.
You always want to check
double
everything.
Check that pawn endgame. But yeah, that looks.
But it does feel like this type of variation where so many pieces get just swapped off is always in the works. Maurice, I just don't see how Magnus is going to squeeze. I mean, he's notorious for squeezing and getting something, but I just don't see anything here for him.
Yeah, there's no soft cotton here to squeeze. This is just simply a draw. We talked about this. When you have high-level players this level, you're going to see a lot of rook and pawn endgames.
Right.
I mean, you're talking about 2,800 players here.
Right.
You're going to see a lot of endgames. Even if down a pawn, the person is going to bail. They're going to bail into something that is drawable within the drawing range. The defensive prowess of today's players is just simply fantastic. They've seen the history of chess. They've got all of that to help them. And then there's this thing called the computer that has shown them even more so. In the old days, a player might get a disadvantage and just get blown off the board, or see the pressure just build and build and build. The modern players are incredible at putting up serious defenses, fortresses even. They are able to show that chess is very, very close to a draw. So you have to catch them with something. Something special has to happen, or a guy has an off day, makes a bad mistake, or just play perfect chess all the way through. Even when you have an advantage, you still have to play perfect chess all the way through, because they're going to compete and compete against you move after move. We saw that first game, Carlsen had his chance. You know, 3 draws in a row, especially with 2 whites. He's got to be feeling like, what's up? I mean, this is having shades of his match against Karyakin as it goes more and more. And he'll have black again the next game. So maybe even 5 draws is the best he can hope for. So that's the kind of thing we're going to see this a lot, and the tension is just going to keep building and building and building. I know that caller sounded real frustrated. Like,
Yeah.
when's there going to be a win up in here? Right. This is building. This is building and building. The tension's rising and rising every move. It's just getting scarier and scarier because the moment you feel like, man, if I lose a game, I am going down. Now, historically, that's not been the case. You can still make that comeback, as Magnus showed in his last match. But that's the feeling you're going to have. And you get the feeling like that about these two. They're such high-level players that if the win happens late, it's probably the match. Right? That's how it's starting to feel. But we're not there yet. We're still only at game 4. I think if you see the first win happen in the last third of the match, it's going to be deadly. Man, in the second third, you could probably make a comeback still.
A couple of non-chess factors, because you talk about how the players are number 1 and number 2, and they're so close. Their chess skill levels are extraordinarily high. When you get into a match situation like this, where you are having this series of draws, this kind of a sense of frustration that you can't break through, we also start talking about nerves. One of the things I've been seeing, and it's not been a good thing in Fabi's case in the last year or two, time trouble has been begun to creep into his play more and more. I've seen him getting into time trouble. He's really using a lot of his clock, and that's usually a bad sign. It means that he's double checking everything. He's just, he wants to be really, really sure. And as the tension of the match builds up, because nobody's making a breakthrough, nerves and the use of the clock could become a factor. And again, it's non-chess. It's not, chess understanding. It's match play. It's
not quite even match play. Just critical moments. Critical moment in a competition. Whether it's even if it was a tournament, it could be round 7, round 8, round 9. When that starts to happen, then it starts to really affect you. And I think that's a very good point, because I think as far as Magnus is concerned, the more attention, the better. The more critical, the better. He has shown himself to be an incredibly cool competitor, and he delivers when he needs to. Again, we can go to the last match. He lost to Karyakin in game 8 and was able to still come back, win a game, then shut things down after that, and then go to the tiebreak and then dominate. So that is something we just don't know as far as Fabi is concerned, and history has shown that those situations don't necessarily favor him. It's not clear cut. We're not saying that it's not going to be good for him, but it's just not clear cut, especially in Rapid and Blitz, where it's been very clear who the #1 player on the planet is. So that's an important point. The more the match goes, that in Carlsen's favor, he doesn't have to take too many chances in order to get something from these positions.
Right. Now, to the position itself, Maurice, we've just seen this move, Bishop E7 to D6, as essayed by Fabi, and he's basically saying, well, I'm in no hurry to try to force anything with C6, C5, or for that matter, F7, F5. Is there anything White can do here? I'm looking. I mean, does the chess engine have any ideas? It really feels dead.
Oh, it's definitely dead, this position. And the engine gives the move H4, which creates a backward pawn. I know, you would not appreciate a move like that one.
Okay, not my first choice for sure.
To be sure, but not because there's anything in the position. Next move is going to be Bishop E1. After Bishop E7, for example, Bishop to E1. And no real progress, just a flat move with nothing much to do. We could start making moves here over and over and over, just for fun.
Yeah.
Like, we could start analyzing. What if we try this? What if we try that? What if we try that? What we'll get at is, this is drawn. Okay. That's what's going to happen. So you can experiment as much as you want and flow through all kinds of moves. This is drawn. Now, can there be a mistake and lose the game? Of course.
Sure.
But from a technical standpoint, we'd have to induce the blunder. We'd have to make the blunder on purpose to say, oh, now suddenly somebody's winning, because this one here is way too equal.
Right. I feel that if there was some edge in the position, it was before the move F6, F6, F5 was played. Once that trade got played, it seemed that the problems were over. Jennifer, we have another caller.
That's right, from North Carolina. Let us know your name and question.
Hi, my name is Charles Robertson.
Hi, Charles.
I have two pieces of information about some conversations yesterday.
Okay.
The first one was pertaining to something, an argument, a debate y'all were having, and Jennifer was right and the guys were wrong.
Jennifer was right again. Hate that.
And the second one was about something Yasser said pertaining to asserting your will in chess. Back to the first one. It was backup moves. Maurice specifically was saying it's easy to see backup moves, but Jennifer was saying not so easy for some people.
Oh, the
I run a
retreating
chess
move.
club here, and I see lots and lots of beginners that believe that the most aggressive person wins, so you should never make backup moves, and so they find it very, very hard to see those. And I think that conversation came up yesterday during a spot where Black played Rook A8, which was, I thought that was an obvious move too. But Jennifer was right. She said that some people find it very hard to see backup moves.
So you saw it, but nobody else did.
Well, no, I'm with you 100%. No, Jennifer was right. And the reality was...
Let's just get that on a loop over and over again. Jennifer was right, they were wrong.
Let's get that on a GIF file. But post-game, Fabi was the first to say that his move Bishop D2 was a mistake, and he had missed the retreating move Rook on A5 to A8, which ended his advantage.
Not Bishop. Oh, you mean Bishop D2?
Bishop D2.
Instead of
He
Rook
should have
Right.
played Rook takes A5. He just got there and he said, oh, I can make the same position and I could just play Bishop D2 and accelerate Rook A1, Queen A1, the position I was trying to retrieve. At least that was the comments I read about the post.
So Fabi missed it, but our caller saw it. So that's just an example of how, well, first of all, you don't have to pick one move when you're watching. That's why kibitzers tend to see so much, because they're able to look at all the different possibilities, whereas when you're sitting there, you're, even the very best player in the world has to pick one move.
And they may have a tunnel vision too.
Yes.
I mean, certainly in my case, I mean, oftentimes I see a position and I said, oh, I really, really strategically, I want to get my knight into the center of the board. Or, by the way,
breaking news, the game is over. We have our fourth draw of the Carlsen-Caruana match, as Carlsen was not able to make headway with the white pieces in this somewhat promising reverse dragon that Fabi deftly equalized. So, achievement for Fabi again, I would say, yes.
No question about it. If I was Magnus, I would love to repeat this game position. There was a number of hesitant moves and frittered away the advantage. But the point was, Fabi held very comfortably. I mean, again, we've talked about it. For 500 years, the strategy of World Championship matches has been very simple.
500?
Yeah, longer. You put pressure on the guy with white and you hold with black. Well, it seems to me that white hasn't put any pressure on the black player whatsoever, and that it almost feels like in this match, white doesn't have any advantage.
Well, I'm not sure. I think our caller had another point.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Well, as our caller was talking, we got the match result. So,
but I don't think he finished.
Is North Carolina still on the line?
There was two questions. He was just saying that you were right. Oh, then he said something about my comment too.
So you were right too?
Oh, I'm not sure about that part. Only that you had been right about the retreating move, and that amateurs have this fear that if they play passively, they're going to lose.
Well, one of the
so they
things
have to play aggressively as possible,
or also,
and not to retreat their pieces.
By the way, I didn't say that's not the case. That wasn't my argument.
You just said in that specific position.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Of course, retreating moves are, and I'll point out, I made a whole DVD on this, in fact, and one of them is what GMs find difficult to see, or what players find difficult to see, are retreating moves. Not just retreating moves, of course. There are other moves as well that people find difficult to see. For example, moves that occur on squares where pawns guard that square. Sometimes you just be completely blind to it. Discovered checks. Something is difficult to see walking into a discovery. A lot of people overrate discovered attacks. And retreating moves. So yes, I completely agreed with that. I was talking about that exact position. And I have to say, I am in fact stunned that in that situation, Fabi thought Rook A1 was forced. That just shows you again, that blind spot is one of the categories that strong players miss. And that one was one of them. And Fabi to miss it, pretty surprising.
We're all human. We're all human. I was just looking at this particular rook ending.
That's right. Even Maurice is wrong sometimes. That's the moral of the story.
We've all been there. We've all been there. Otherwise, we would win all of our games. Yeah. A comfortable, easy hold, I would say, for Fabi. Very, very nice. I thought, seriously, right about here, these parts, I would call this a hesitant or soft move. I thought E3 was hesitant. These last three moves for me is where I think Magnus really lost whatever lion's share, if there's any share of advantage. I do like white, but I think he had to get in B5 really early, and we were looking at a possible line of play that may have been captures A5 that put Magnus off. I like white's position, that's all I can really say. When Magnus didn't go for the idea of E4 followed by D4, when he did not play in this way, but instead played for E3, then already at this point, I thought that Fabi, the draw was, I'm going to say, inevitable.
You know, it's funny, Yaz, you showing that position.
With the one with B5 early?
No, actually multiple positions.
Okay.
I find there's something really interesting about strength and ability. Because a player is a stronger player, as Magnus is clearly stronger than any of us, but you've been top 10. Because he's stronger doesn't mean that he's stronger than you in all positions.
Absolutely.
Right? Like any position you put in front of Magnus, he's going to play better than any position you put in front of Yasser Seirawan. Absolutely not, because people specialize in certain things. And we know, for example, that English was your bread and butter.
That's
so
right.
You're going to be like a fish in the right pond when you say the English.
Right.
Bring it. If we're gonna only play Englishes this whole tournament and this whole match, let's do that.
A shot.
I'm gonna be a 2800 for sure.
Right.
If you're going to switch up and play a variety of openings, and then, well, I'm not really comfortable over there. What are we going to play that for? Some Sicilians? I never played that. What is that about? No. Right? Caro Khan? Okay, Seirawan is back in business. So, depends on the situation. So for you, you've sat over these positions for decades, literally, and you see all the nuance. You feel exactly, you should do this. You should try this one. This one, no, that's not going to work. That's garbage. Oh, yeah, I know you think that's unclear, but we're going to build with this one. Oh, the knight's off the board, Maurice, but you know what? I've seen Bob Vinnick do blah, 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 because this is what I live for. Right. So we want to look at some Magnus, and Magnus, of course, knows a copious amount of stuff. It's unreal how much stuff he knows and can quote so many circumstances. But it doesn't mean that every single position is going to feel as finely as everybody else who specializes in that specific place.
Exactly.
And so I'm looking at you just throw moves out and saying, oh, this idea, this idea. And Magnus hesitating a little bit in that situation.
May have cost him.
May have cost him the game.
Yeah.
Or at least opportunities to really build and give a more advantageous position.
Well, you brought up something just absolutely phenomenal. In 1970s, when I started playing chess, I mean, the top grandmasters were specialists. They played E4 exclusively, that was it. Mm-hmm. They played D4 exclusively, that was it. They played C4 exclusively, that was it. And one of the things that I just find absolutely extraordinary about the elite, the top 10 players today, is they're ambidextrous. They can punch with either hand. They can go
I'm sorry,
E4.
they got more than 2 hands.
Yeah, they got 4 hands.
They're like octopi, really.
Yeah.
I mean, they can
That's
do anything, everything,
E4,
both with white and with black.
E4, D4, C4, and it's like they're masters of all trades. But even so, you know, somebody like Magnus who knows, just as you said, such copious amounts of middle games and end games, doesn't mean that they're going to be absolute specialists. This game today, Magnus, I'm sure, felt that he had an edge, but then he didn't play it like just absolutely perfectly, and it would have required really, really great play to get some significant advantage. And from, you know, Fabi's point of view, he got an easy position and he held it. And this is a real confidence builder. That's the one I think, you know, I can only think about it in that way.
But I'm looking at it, it reminds me of Kramnik's statement yesterday about form. And this point he made, he said, when Fabi's in great form, he can beat anybody, and including Magnus. Just run right through him.
Right.
Run right through anyone, right? Not necessarily Magnus, but Magnus has felt Fabi's fire before.
Sure.
But if Magnus is not on great form, he's still going to be basically Magnus.
Right.
Basically. And basically Magnus is 2850. I mean,
right.
That's just basically Magnus. And Fabi could be like a 2950, like a machine. So the issue is, it looks to me right now that neither one of them is in form at the moment. Like, something's going to have to click. After that first game, it looked like Magnus was playing like a superstar, then didn't seal the deal. Since then, they've both looked a little bit like the moment. I don't know if it's the moment. I don't know if it's the opponent. I don't know what's going on. But right now, we're not seeing them play incisive, rock'em sock'em, pure chess moves. That's not happening right now. And using the time, because that you're talking about, Yasser, has a lot to do with timing. Like, I should play B5 now. Right. Don't wait around, because if you wait around, the guy's going to consolidate really fast, and then it's going to be easy. So timing is a big issue as well. And when you're in form, you just hit the right notes all the time. Hit it now. Let's do it right now. Nope, don't wait. And that is not there yet for both these players.
Or also, they're playing each other, and they're both so strong that their defensive skills are even higher. So that obviously factors in. But we do have a special guest on the line, Fred Whiteskin, author of many books, including, of course, Searching for Bobby Fischer, which was later a major movie about his son, Josh. Welcome to the show, Fred. It's so great to have you.
Nice to speak to you, Jennifer. How you doing?
Oh, we're doing great here, watching this phenomenal match. We just getting the right graphic up there in a second. I'm with Grandmaster Maurice Ashley, good friend of yours as well as a Grandmaster Yasser Seirawan.
How you doing, man? Maurice is a buddy of mine for 20 years.
I think
or
you
more than 20 years.
Right? I think you undercounted.
I think it's a little longer than that.
It's been.
Yeah, I'm not so good at years.
Yeah, we forget them after a couple of decades pass.
Right.
Fred, you know.
You guys look great, incidentally. I've been watching the commentary and really enjoying it.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it. And
I remember.
Hi, Astor. I haven't seen you in years, also, man. You look great. Well, how do you stay so young, man?
I don't know, but I remember you as curly-haired. What happened, Fred?
Yeah, those were the days.
Yeah, really, really curly locks. I mean, just like your son, Josh.
And
it's all good. It's all good. It's nice to have you on the line with us. Hello.
Great to be on.
What's your impression of this match, Fred? You know, you've written about Garry Kasparov. Of course, you wrote about this classic chess scene in Searching for Bobby Fischer. Are you on Team Fabi?
You know, I'll tell you. Of course, I'm for Fabi. But, I mean, I've always watched chess in a funny kind of way. I mean, I've always watched chess impressionistically. I mean, I used to hang out with Kasparov. I was with him for 3 or 4 years, almost inseparably, and I watched him play a million games, championship games and also speed games. But I never really understood chess like a chess player. I sort of understood it impressionistically. I kind of could feel the position. But if you asked me to work out the tactics like you guys do every minute, I couldn't have done it then. And now I'm like a lot of years removed from it. So I still find it very exciting to watch it, but I don't understand chess in the same way that like a strong chess player does.
But Fred, as far as psychologically, though, you do have great intuitive powers there. And as you did follow Kasparov in particularly his last match. And what is your feeling when you see these great players, these elite players, playing on that level as a world championship match? The tension of the moment, as you've tasted, as you've been up close to someone like a Garry Kasparov.
Well, you know, spending the time with Kasparov was really remarkable because I don't think any journalist ever had the opportunity to be with a world championship player in all his practices. You know, Garry agreed to meet with me at the end of every game to talk about it, and he was you know, very accessible emotionally. So when he lost the game, he was devastated and didn't mind articulating it, and it was really amazing being there. Again, and I'm being completely honest, you know, when I watch it on the screen like this, I can't feel it in the same way that I felt it when I was there. But on the other hand, you know, I mean, just the idea that a world championship match is taking place and an American has a chance to do it again after like a gazillion years with Bobby Fischer, it's thrilling.
Right. That was a part of your history as well, right? Bobby Fischer, you remember the time in '72? Can you paint a picture for us how that was?
Yeah, I mean, it was just amazing. I mean, you know, like when Bobby was playing for the World Championship, you know, I kind of discovered chess like, you know, gazillions of other Americans. I mean, I watched the games. I watched Shelby Lyman and Bruce Pandolfini on television. And right. Shelby Lyman was this remarkable figure because he had this ability to make chess accessible to everybody, grandmaster chess accessible to everybody, even though in a sense he was creating an illusion. He gave us all the feeling that we could create the kind of the same moves that Bobby did if we just thought about it for a while. We all kind of got sucked into this illusion that we could do it. And I was, you know, at the head of the class. I mean, I kind of believed from watching the match that I was a terrific player, and you know, I started playing against all my friends, and I won a few games, and I decided I was a good player. And then I started going to one of the chess clubs, and I started playing against a guy who was reading the newspaper while he was playing me and checkmated me without even looking at the board. And that was when I started to have a sense that my illusion about chess was different than the reality.
Right.
Hey, don't read that illusion.
But then in this remarkable way, you know, I had this kid, you know, who was 6 years old, and he was really good at chess. And by the time he was 6.5, he was beating me, hardly looking at the board. So I kind of like had this second chance at chess through Josh. It was great.
And it's amazing, Fred, you mentioned the illusion of feeling like you see more than you do. Of course, every player now who has access to a stockfish can get that same feeling. And you mentioned your son Josh, and you know, ever since he stopped playing chess, he's just been doing phenomenally. I mean, the martial arts and the phenomenal book, The Art of Learning. You must be very proud, being an author of so many books yourself, that he wrote that great book himself. Did you teach him writing after chess?
You know, Josh and I have always had an unusual relationship in terms of what we've done together. I mean, you know, I've just finished this new novel, and you know, Josh read 3 drafts of it and made suggestions, and when he writes things, he usually puts them past me. So we're kind of like, in a way, we're kind of like a team, and it's wonderful. And I am, of course, hugely proud of him. I mean, you know, I guess many or a lot of you viewers know this, but when he left chess, he went into the martial arts, and he became a martial arts world champion in 2004, which is amazing.
Right.
Absolutely incredible, especially at that late time. I remember because Josh and I worked together for so many years, as you know, Fred, in your living room, hanging out, playing blitz against each other and analyzing variations. Somebody wanted me to thank Josh for the Chessmaster series as well, that he put together such a great series that they learned from. And he also wrote a chess book as well. I know, Fred, you're working on a new novel and you're working on movies. Tell us about your projects really quickly.
Yeah, this has been a very cool few years for me. I spent about 2.5 years writing a screenplay, which I'd never done before, and it's called The Rave, and it's being cast now. It's a very cool story about a guy that creates raves, you know, a lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll in northern Massachusetts.
Wow.
And it's a complicated love story, and one aspect of it is very amusing is that a family member comes to this rave, a guy about my age comes to this rave who's never been to a rave before, and we get to witness that through his eyes. So it's really kind of amazing. And rumor has it that Al Pacino is going to play that part, which would be really great if it happens.
Oh my God!
And,
wow! Congrats.
And the book that's really dear to my heart now is a new novel that I've worked on for the last year and a half. It's called Deepwater Blues, and it tells the story about these three old timers who set off in an old boat for an island, a very, very remote island in the southern Bahamas, where it used to be like a kind of glamorous resort where the rich and famous hung out. I mean, all sorts of celebrities went there. But rumor has it something very dark and sinister and terrible happened to this place. And these guys make this trip, which is quite harrowing, in this old boat. And they get to this island and they discover that this place has been morally and ethically destroyed by a series of events that are really quite remarkable. And I don't want to kind of give the whole plot away, but it's an exciting story, and that'll be coming out on May 1st.
Wow, Fred, you have so many projects going on. I have to ask,
like
though.
You're having too much fun, actually.
I gotta ask about the rave, though. Did you have, in order to research the screenplay, did you have to go out to a lot of raves? Like, is the lead character based on you at all?
Absolutely.
The lead character, there's a lot of me in the character. And I'll just tell you a secret. Yeah, I went to the rave.
All right, wow.
You sexual god, you. Well done.
Don't tell anyone.
I won't. Lips are sealed, Fred.
Final question for you, Fred. We'll let you go. You wrote Searching for Bobby Fischer, phenomenal success, a movie that so many people have seen and loved.
Enjoyed, yeah.
You wrote the book, of course, and helped with the screenplay. And we see the picture there, certainly a classic. And that book, Mortal Games, was a lot of fun as well. I did read it too, and that was very insightful into the genius of Garry Kasparov and the access that you talked about. What do you feel about this match, what it could do for American chess? Will it do what Bobby Fischer did back in that Cold War era, or something similar?
Well, listen, you know, Maurice, I'm a candid guy, so I mean, first of all, if Fabiano were to win the match, it would be great for American chess. But I think it would be an exaggeration to say it would do for American chess what Bobby Fischer did. Bobby Fischer was larger than chess. I mean, he was like Muhammad Ali. You know, he was like Muhammad Ali was not, you know, a boxer. He was like a mythic. He was a mythic cultural institution, and Bobby was like that. He was like a larger-than-life person. Having said that, if Fabiano won, it would be great for American chess.
Right. Well said. Well, thank you so much, Fred. We appreciate it. I know you are about to set off on vacation, so thanks for making the time for us, and good luck with all these great projects. We'll certainly get folks to get your book, and I wanted this rave movie. Oh, man.
I can't wait to see it.
I can't wait
wow.
for that to come out. So you got to let us know. We'll promote it once more on our show later next year.
I look forward to it. And listen, guys, you know, I've been watching you the last 4 days since you went on. You're a great team. You know, you have great synergy between you. I really love your broadcast.
Thank you so much, Fred. Means a lot coming from you.
Thanks, guys.
All right,
bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye, Fred.
You know, it was a couple years ago, I was, maybe when I was pregnant or just had Fabi, I reread some of Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, it's just so well written. I mean, just the journey of being a chess dad and the complicated emotions. It's really fascinating, I think, for any parent to read, especially as you start to see yourself partly, your child partly as an extension of yourself.
Right.
Knowing, of course, respecting them as an individual, but also seeing yourself and your partner in them. And it's really fascinating. Just such a great writer. Obviously, you can find all of his books online. And his son Josh's book, The Art of Learning, is become such a popular title, not only among chess players or martial artists. It's very big in the mindset community. It's big in the poker community. Just any kind of community where people are really stressed about getting better at what they do because it's super, super competitive and they like hit a wall.
Right.
That's where like they need a book like that.
Right. Well, for me especially, I love the Searching for Bobby Fischer book because I love the interplay, the relation of father and son. and how, you know, oftentimes the father's angry with the little boy. The little boy's not going to do what daddy wants, and little boy's angry with daddy because daddy doesn't allow the little boy to do what he wants. So
or
this
doesn't even
relationship,
understand the genius of the kid.
or doesn't even
Just
understand the
kind of
genius of the
peripherally
kid. And this relationship between father and son, and how chess really brought this fantastic bonding. And then as Fred was just talking about, you know, the writings that both Josh and he do, and they trade files, so to speak. What a cool way of staying in touch and having this relationship where you're nurturing one another and pushing one another. It's very empowering. I think that's fantastic.
Oh, I've seen them over the decades, and it's one fantastic family. Bonnie and Katja, Fred, that is Fred's daughter,
right.
Josh's sister. Just great bonds between them, great love, great sharing, great conversations. I've been very fortunate to be a part of the extended family, if you will. Dear friends of mine, and one of the great things about Fred is you hear just as he speaks, the lyrical simplicity of his words. I mean, his words are well chosen, and they're coming off the top of his head, though, and he just, like a dart, just hit the points, hit the points, hit the points. And his writing style is like that as well. And just really beautiful character.
Wonderful. Now, let's refresh ourselves. Four games.
Well, I gotta remind people that we've got Maurice is flying out tonight.
What? We lose Maurice.
Yeah, that's right. Again, he's going on the Trevor Noah show. I mean, the Daily Show with Trevor Noah.
Okay. You can call it Trevor Noah show. People understand it the same way.
Right.
Yeah, but that's like super exciting, Maurice. So.
And there it is.
Tell us about that.
He's going on the show. What's it?
I'm going on the show. That's it. I'm going to go hang out with Trevor, and you know he made fun of chess. Let me let you know.
Yes, that's right.
When it was the Daily Show with Jon Stewart, he came on and knocked chess, and it was a good skit. I got to say, you guys can look it up, but I'm going to have to bust his chops a little bit about that. So we're going to have a little fun, and of course, I'm sure he's got stuff prepared for me. So hopefully, you know, I'm on my A game to deal with whatever he's got coming. But it's great for chess. We're going to talk about the World Chess Championship. So, you know, we got 4 draws. He's probably going to pound me down about the draws. But, you know,
just tell him those 2 wins and 2 losses.
Right. You know,
throw some jabs
we'll see what happens. Whatever it is, it's great to get more and more publicity for chess on late night television and have a little fun with it. So it'll be good. I'm flying out tonight out of St. Louis. The show is taping tomorrow. Then I've got to figure out my way back from New York to get here. I don't know if I'm going to make it exactly in time for the start of this show. We'll see if I can pull that off. Hopefully, planes go well and weather is all right. We'll see, but that's the aim.
All right. Well, Maurice, have a great time in New York with Trevor Noah, and I can't wait to see what round 5 brings. I mean, this is it. This is where Magnus has to hit because he's got a couple of whites in a row. Of course, Fabi gets white the next game, but then Magnus will have 2 whites in a row. So it's Magnus' time to show if he's got anything, and if not,
I'm not sure. It may be Fabi's time to hit on game 5.
Because you got game 5.
Knowing that Magnus does have 2 whites in a row, that means if you fritter away your 3rd white, then suddenly the guy comes bing and bing. He's looking to hit you 2 games. You're going to be under pressure. So this might be the moment to really bring out whatever you've got to try to hunt this guy down. That ain't going to be easy, though. And I have a feeling Fabi doesn't feel that kind of pressure, by the way. We're describing this narrative. This guy's
Fabi's feeling fabulous.
Well, one of the things, they do have a free day. We've seen 2 Rossalimo Sicilians. I haven't been that impressed exactly by what White has gotten, but Fabi sounded pretty comfortable, like that he felt that he had something in the 2nd White. So perhaps we're going to see another Rossalimo Sicilian, and that's just the way it's going to be.
I'm going to go with no.
You're going to.
I'm thinking open or some other type of anti. like C3 closed, something different than
Well,
the Ras Lima.
we've got a whole free day to think about it.
We got a whole free day to take bets on it. And
Yeah.
we will see you on Thursday. Coverage is going to begin at 9 a.m. Central. That's 10 a.m. Eastern. And don't worry, Maurice is going to come running in at some point early in the broadcast, throw his suitcase aside, and give us the rundown on the games and, of course, on Trevor Noah.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us, everyone. We'll see you Thursday.
See you Thursday.